It's WFUV and WFUV HD, New York. Listener-supported public media from Fordham, the Jesuit University of New York. Right here on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org. This is One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show here on 90.7 FM, Facebook, and YouTube. We're taking you up until 2 a.m. here on the East Coast. Good you could be with us here tonight. I'm Jimmy Sullivan, alongside Kris Pursiainen. Mike Calamari will be along with the headlines in a bit. Kris, good to be with you here tonight, and we have a lot to get into. I think it starts with the NFL draft. Jets, Giants, a bunch to get into there, and a lot of interesting happenings. You've got the Jets being very aggressive. You've got the Giants trading back a little bit, but I think both of these teams have a lot to be happy about with how the draft went.
Hey, Jimmy. Yeah, great to be here as well. And, you know, in regards to the New York football teams, and I apologize to the fans of Buffalo, but these two squads put together some wheeling and dealing. I mean, just what an active first couple days for both Douglas and Gettleman, Saleh and Judge's brain trust, their team. Just going out and grabbing a bunch of guys ironically that really just fit, you know, the scheme, what that team's trying to accomplish. You see the Jets going out and making moves that seem to match what they have in mind. Same thing with the Giants, potentially just, you know, really bolstering the squad they had last year and trying to look to the future in a move like Tony. I thought this was a nice draft for both teams.
Yeah, it was, and we'll get into all of that in a little bit more detail as the show goes along. We'll be talking about that in a few minutes in a little bit more depth. And we're going to get into some of these QBs who were taken in the first round. We knew Trevor Lawrence was going number 1. We knew Zach Wilson was going number 2 to the Jets. Trey Lance goes 3 to the Niners. The Bears trade up for Justin Fields. The Patriots stay for Mac Jones. Very big distinction there. They did not trade up. We had them trading up last week, which doesn't count because it wasn't real. But the Patriots stay at 15 for Mac Jones. 5 quarterbacks in the first 15 picks. 3 wind up going in the first 3. And I'm not sure what to think about some of these, you know. Once you get outside the obvious, you've got Trey Lance, who is 20 years old, basically didn't play last year. You've got Justin Fields, who, has shown some questionable things on tape. And then you got Mac Jones, who was a smokescreen with the 49ers at number 3. People thought that they might take him with the 3rd pick. Instead, he falls all the way down to 15. Kris, I thought there might be more quarterbacks taken early on in the draft, but we didn't wind up getting that. And instead, you've got Justin Fields falling out of the top 10, and the Patriots wind up getting their guy in Mac Jones without having to trade up at all, even though I think some people thought that the Patriots were going to have to trade up. Instead, they stay at 15, Kris.
For Belichick to be able to get Jones there is just a nice little way for the first round to turn out for him. I mean, you just saw Tom Brady find success in New England playing a style of football that did not require, you know, the Mahomes-like athletic shows. Mac Jones obviously cannot currently be placed in the same sentence as Tom Brady just for respect reasons, but in regards to trying to find someone to develop in that system with Coach Belichick, I think the Patriots have to be really happy with the fact that they were able to secure Jones at 15.
Yeah, for sure. And he might be, the indirect heir apparent to Tom Brady. The Buccaneers drafted the heir apparent to Tom Brady last night. He won't see the field for another 10 years, but it doesn't matter. It's Kyle Trask. So we'll see what winds up happening there. But I think in the subtext of everything that has happened with the NFL draft and everything that has gone on there, all the picks being taken and the trades that were made, there was one story that really kind of superseded what happened at the NFL draft. And that was the one with Aaron Rodgers. We find out on Thursday afternoon via a report from ESPN's Adam Schefter that Rodgers basically wants out of Green Bay, a situation that had been simmering for a year, and the Packers now have to figure out what to do with him. Brian Gutekunst, the general manager, has said they're not trading him. We'll see what actually winds up happening there. But, Kris, I think a really fascinating story out of Green Bay. A lot of different angles with Aaron Rodgers, but it looks like, at least to me, this is a marriage that probably is going to end poorly. Now, whether or not that happens right away, we'll see what happens. Do they trade him? Do they not trade him? But it looks like, to me, Aaron Rodgers and the Packers are pretty much done.
It's incredibly strange to watch the NFL pull off some NBA-like drama for once. But listen, as a big NBA fan, I'm here for it, Jimmy. And to see this Aaron Rodgers saga unfold, as the fan of a team that is not the Green Bay Packers, is also pretty entertaining. So in terms of where Rodgers is going to go, we heard about San Francisco. We heard about Denver and these different teams with potential interest. Whether Green Bay deals him at all remains to be seen. I remember not too long ago on this very show, the topic of discussion was Russell Wilson and his potentially failed marriage with the Seahawks. So it seems to me that this Rodgers saga this part of the Rodgers saga as of right now cannot be ruled out as a potential very dramatic bargaining tactic, as the two sides are indeed in current talks on an extension.
It's very interesting too. Full disclosure, we're recording this right now a little after 11 a.m. Aaron Rodgers is at the Kentucky Derby today. He might run into a microphone, and then I don't know what would be said. But keep an eye on that if it happens. Not sure if anything will happen, but it's worth keeping an eye on. Moving along. We'll react to some of the picks in the NFL draft, some of the good ones, some of the not good ones. There were plenty of not good ones, as there often are. Nothing like analyzing it 48 hours out when these guys have never taken the field. But got to move on from that to some MLB discussion. The Mets are not hitting. The Yankees hit a lot last night. But, Kris, I know you're a Mets fan, correct? As I understand it.
Indeed.
This team, it's insane. They can't score. They invested in the offense. They went out and they got Francisco Lindor. They got James McCann. They had one of the best offenses in the league last year. And now they're sitting here. They can't hit. They can't score. That's concerning. A month into the season, they're sitting at 9-11. Their pitching has been amazing, and yet they are struggling to put up runs.
How the benches in yesterday's game were able to clear themselves so many times, but the hitters of the New York Mets were not able to show anywhere near as much fight was quite the juxtaposition. I mean, just a game in and game out. Like I feel as if it can be described as fruitless, quite aptly. Just a fruitless effort for the Mets again.
Yeah, That's probably a good word for it. This offense is just I don't even know what to say, honestly. I mean, it's frustrating. You thought new ownership and the moves they made, you're thinking, all right, this is different. This team is different. And yet here they are, unable to score. Still can't do it. It's really annoying. It's really frustrating. But I don't even know what to say anymore. Honestly, you know what? I throw my hands up and I give up. That's what I say.
White flag.
White flag. Punt. Moving on. When we get to the 1 o'clock hour, very excited for this one. We'll have Dave Parker, guy who can make a very good argument should be in the MLB Hall of Fame. 19-year MLB veteran. Talk to him about his new book, Cobra, his autobiography about his time in baseball, his life before and after the game. Had a great conversation with Dave. Looking forward to sharing that. And then to wrap up the show, we've got about 45 minutes of basketball. And we're talking Nets. We're talking Knicks. We're looking ahead to the NBA playoffs. Sneaking up on us. It's going to be in a couple of weeks. I am very excited. A lot of different storylines. But Kris, the New York Knicks, your beloved New York Knicks, are rolling. The number 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. They might host a home playoff series in the first round. This is the dream season, man. I don't know how you can ask for anything more. Tom Thibodeau is doing an awesome job. Team's well coached. Julius Randle could be an all-NBA player. Just incredible stuff. I am so happy for Knicks fans. I am so happy for you that you guys get to see this season the way they're playing.
Thank you, Jimmy. And you said it best. Julius Randle, all NBA caliber play. I believe it was Zach Harper who said that he would vote Randle to the first all-NBA team due to guys like Davis missing time with injury. Just high praise all around the league now for the Manhattan team in New York. I mean, it's clear that this team came into the season with a roster not designed to win an exorbitant amount of games, but apparently what they did come into the season with was a roster built to defy expectations, because between guys like Randall and Barrett with things to prove to the New York fan base, guys like Burks, Rivers, who's now no longer on the team, but Noel, just the type of acquisitions they made, they have this kind of jumble of career journeymen and unproven young players, and Emmanuel Quickly, widely considered a reach. You know, just to see it all come together like this has been fantastic.
I don't think you could ask for much more if you're the New York Knicks. A lot to get into on this show. It's going to be a fantastic voyage. We hope you can tune in. Coming up next, I'm going to tell you why the Jets are doing more for Zach Wilson than they ever did for Sam Darnold. Because I think it's pretty objectively true when you look at what Joe Douglas and company have done in the first 2 rounds. We've got that. We've got Trader Dave discussion. Much more on the other side of this break. Jimmy Sullivan, Kris Pursiainen, taking you up until 2 a.m. on 90.7 FM, Facebook, and YouTube. We'll be right back.
One-on-One has a brand new YouTube channel. Subscribe to WFUV Sports to catch our simulcast Saturday nights and get notifications so you never miss another show. Miss the show? You can find on-demand segments, interviews, and highlights every week. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Back on One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show, taking you up until 2 a.m. in the East. Right now, a little after 11:15. The draft will have been completed by the time you hear this, but I've got to get into Jets and Giants. And I said before the break, I really believe that the New York Jets have done more for Zach Wilson than they ever did for Sam Darnold. And I think the case is pretty clear. They draft him at 2 on Thursday night in the first round. They take Elijah Vera Tucker, the guard out of USC, with the 14th pick. They traded up from 23 to go get him. And then they go get Elijah Moore, wide receiver out of Ole Miss at 34, a guy who has garnered really high praise. A lot of people thought he could be a first-round pick. He winds up falling to the Jets. Kris, this is exciting for Jets fans. They've got a fun little offense, a new scheme with Mike LaFleur coming over from the 49ers, and really a fresh start, it feels like, with Joe Douglas and company, dare I say it, at massive personal risk, doing a great job in the NFL draft, a phrase that has not been associated with the Jets in a long, long time. Kudos to the Jets. It's been outstanding.
I will say that You know when you're taking like a math test and you mess up the first step, but then you do the rest of the problem right. So the teacher's like, So Wilson's not who I would have taken.
Really?
It wouldn't have been my guy. I think if you really trust your coaching staff and you're willing to wait, I think Lance is perfect. And then if not, I just think Fields is the better football player. However, I'm going to give the Jets a lot of partial credit here on this question because once they did take Wilson, they made absolutely great decisions across the board to help him in his rookie year not have to deal with the many, many pitfalls of Jets football that Mr. Darnold did indeed have to face. I mean, between having someone like Davis, a receiver with talent like Moore, and someone like Mims already in the building developing, this is a good little landing spot for Zach Wilson now. This team has transformed itself into a team that definitely needs to make some changes before they're ready to harbor a young quarterback, to a team constructed to harbor a young quarterback. And how well it goes or anything like that is up to, the fate of the season. But I think Jets fans can be confident going into the year that this was all done, with good process, with good thinking, and just, in my opinion, great execution to trade up to grab Vera Tucker and then to get Moore, who was a lot of analysts' receiver 4 there in the second round. Just great stuff from Douglas.
It's interesting you bring up Lance. So he goes 3 to the Niners, right? And this guy's 20 years old. He played in 1 game last year. I saw on ESPN, he had the least yards of anybody to be taken in the first round the year before. Least passing yards out of anybody taken in the first round. I think that the reason somebody like Lance works with the Niners, and the reason they took him at 3, they don't need to play him right away. And we'll get into this later. But the New York Jets, if they decided to, say, keep Sam Darnold and draft Trey Lance, it doesn't work the same way, I don't think. I mean, it's a tough situation. So now you're between Wilson and Fields. The thing with Wilson that's really impressive to me is the arm talent so clearly there. And you made a really interesting analogy that I liked before the show, and I'll let you make it if you so choose. But, you know, Justin Fields, let's just say at times makes some reads that are mind-numbing. And, yeah, I like Justin Fields. I think he could be a good NFL quarterback, but he needs to work that out. Zach Wilson, I think most of the time is making the right reads. And he's got the arm talent to make pretty much any throw. They've gotten him the offensive line, which I think is enormous, because part of his success at BYU last year was he had an offensive line that was really, really good. Guys like Bernie Christensen, who was taken last night, and you've got, you know, an older offensive line just by virtue of it being BYU, a lot of guys who are 24 or 25 years old. And nonetheless, Zach Wilson really successful. When he gets time to throw, he's shown that he can be really successful. So I think shoring out the left side of that offensive line, absolutely huge for him. So I think they put him in a really good spot. And I think, I hesitate when I say this, but I think he could be the guy. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, but they've put him in a really good spot with the line, with the receivers. And I think we're going to let the chips fall where they may now.
It would be great for Wilson to come and be the guy that Jets fans have been looking for so long. I mean, he's already feeling the wrath of New York sports media, being told he looks too boyish and doesn't have, you know, the New York look. Him in his photos of his Verizon window posing. I mean, just there's a lot of stuff going out, you know, now around draft time that just makes it seem like that it's the Jets, and this is, of course, the guy they chose, and he's not going to go out and prove him wrong. I'm here for it. I'm here for both New York City teams, rather, being top contenders. I'd love it. That'd be quite fun to have our own version of a Subway series, except just a walk series.
Yeah, walk across the locker room, basically. And it's funny, I saw the Zach Wilson tweet. So he was standing in front of the mirror, and he looks like he's, you know, 14 years old. And he's standing there, and I saw one tweet that made me spit out my drink, where he said, whoever tweeted it said that Zach Wilson is getting ready to drop 400 yards on Don Bosco. Now, I went to Bergen Catholic, okay? And that was pretty on the nose, although I will say Bergen Catholic's last quarterback, Johnny Langan, who's now at Rutgers, has Wilson beat by about 40, 50 pounds. So that's a little disrespectful to us. But nonetheless, I'm not taking Bergen slander here. Absolutely not. But it was a funny tweet.
No BC digs.
No, but I will say it was a funny tweet, and I threw it a like because it was funny. But They've given him the offensive line. I love this pick of Elijah Moore. Now, here's the problem with the Jets, okay? Their quarters are terrible. Their defense as a whole is not very good. And they're going to – everybody's getting very excited about the Jets right now. They're still probably only going to win, probably like 5 games next year, I think, if we're being, you know, in the middle of this here. Because here's the deal. You've got a solid offense. You've got a good receiving core now. You've got, you think, a good quarterback. They're going to lose games next year, but they might lose 38-31. There's something to be said for that. And there's something to be said for losing in an entertaining way, right? The Los Angeles Chargers last year lost every game in maximum entertaining fashion. Like, they found new ways to lose, and that's why everybody got fired at the end of the season. But
yeah, but Herbert.
Nonetheless, but there's something to be said about that, right? Justin Herbert was awesome last year, right? He was the best rookie quarterback playing last year once Joe Burrow got hurt. Zach Wilson stepping into this situation, there's no pressure on him to win next year. There's pressure on him to play well, yeah, because the tabloids are what the tabloids are. But let's also be real. This is a Jets franchise that has not sniffed the playoffs in 10 years. So there isn't pressure on him right away to go 10-7. I almost said 10-6. Now it's a 17-game season. But there isn't pressure on him to go out, win 10, 11 games, and go to the playoffs. Like there would be, there would be maybe on other quarterbacks in different situations. Zach Wilson could go in, have growing pains, learn the offense, play well at the end of the season, and everybody's going to feel great about it. So I actually don't think it's a bad situation at all. Once you take the New York element out of it and all the things that come along with being quarterback of the Jets, I think it's a really good spot for him to land, given what they have done around him. So I think it actually works out very well.
Just, as we said, and as you just covered, the pieces put into place to help Wilson grow up in the NFL. Which, as we just mentioned again, a lot of people think he needs to do, is grow up. I mean, for Wilson to be able to be raised by LaFleur in that system, it should go well. I think with the talent they have and with the throws we know Wilson can make and just the intelligence that coaching staff is bringing in and the playbook and like that should work. That should be a more than adequate first year of development for Zach Wilson. And going into this season for Jets fans, I mean, that's kind of got to be the number one thing you're hoping for is just, all right, you got another Sam. Now don't Sam him. Don't do it.
I'm old enough to remember when Sam Darnold was the guy, right? Everybody got excited and, oh, my goodness. And then they changed the front office and Sam Darnold wasn't the guy. But that is what it is. And should just touch on just briefly before anybody brings it up in the car or online. Elijah Moore, the guy the Jets took last night, if you remember the Egg Bowl a couple of years ago, he was the guy who in the end zone, pantomimed a dog on his walk and cost Ole Miss the Egg Bowl, basically, or a chance to win the Egg Bowl because they moved the extra point back and then the kid missed the extra point. So Elijah Moore never heard the end of that one, basically. So that's the guy the Jets took. Now, I'm not holding that against him because everybody learns, and I'm sure Elijah Moore has learned a lot from that. And he said as much last night, but should be mentioned. So that's the situation with the Jets. New quarterback, new coach, new everything. And frankly, thank God after watching that team last year. That was abominable.
But you beat the Rams.
Yeah, thank you. That's nice. It got us a lot, didn't it? Yeah. That was those two games against the Rams and the Browns. Really, yeah, cool. Let's move over to the Giants before I get any more angry about Adam Gase, who's no longer the head coach of the Jets. So the New York Giants, with a GM who has his job on the line and who, might be in his final year running the Giants front office, decided to trade for future picks to burnish their draft capital in 2022 and beyond. I give Dave Gettleman a lot of credit for this. This is a guy who, as we said, on the hot seat, has never traded back in the draft until this year. He trades 3 different times, 2 times back, 1 time forward. He gets Kadarius Toney at 20 after he gets the pick from Chicago, who moves up to 11. They get Azeez Ojulari in round 2. They get Aaron Robinson, the corner out of UCF, in round 3. Chris, I respect this a lot from Dave Gettleman. Like, he is doing what is best for the franchise, and he has traded for a bunch of picks that he might not actually get the chance to use. And I can't help but respect him for that because it's the best thing for the New York Giants.
The acquisition of the additional picks in 2022 is really, really intelligent to me. And the reason that I first, have that read is because if Daniel Jones does indeed stink this year, you've provided yourself with a lot of ammunition to go up and get a guy, whether it's Howell, Radler. You're going to have probably the ability to go up and get maybe up to number 2 just with what you've gone and acquired. I mean, the extra first, it was clear when the Giants were at 11 that they were waiting for an Alabama receiver. Waddle gone at 6. He was my number 1 target, unfortunately for myself. My number 2, Devonta Smith, who the Philadelphia Eagles so proudly snatched from under our noses. They trade back. And what I loved about the trade back was that it wasn't just a trade back. It was a very chess-like trade back in that, it wasn't New Orleans coming up to grab a cornerback. It was a team going up 9 spots to get a QB. That's a position in which you can squeeze some value out of them, and they certainly did. I mean, the last time a move, I think the move instead of 20 to 11, the last comparable trade was from the 20th pick to the 10th pick, and the compensation was a third round pick and either a second or something else. It wasn't a first, a fourth, and a fifth. And then to trade back again, I mean, you're on the clock at 42. I had about 3 or 4 players that I was targeting. They moved back to 50. I'm like, all right, back to homework. I'll go back to the stream in about 15 minutes here. And all 3 of my main guys were on the board, and they get my number 1 in Ojulari. It's just committing that type of premium draft capital to an edge with where we are now. Great with me, especially with Patrick Graham in the building, coordinating that defense. Just I'm really happy. And then Robinson, so the cornerback, and Doug Tony's joystick like highlights, just also fun to watch. A fun and shrewd approach that helps the team get better this year, gives Jones another playmaker. And what I think is most important is that it gives Jones one less excuse. You want to have Daniel Jones with as few excuses as possible going into this year so that you can evaluate him and then make your choice. I think Joe Judge, you were mentioning Dave Gettleman might not be here to make those picks. I will say without, mentioning too many words that I think it's not a coincidence that Gettleman never trades down. And then Judge comes in, and now all of a sudden they're looking at Alabama guys and they're looking at SEC guys and they're trading down, and I don't think it's a coincidence. I don't. And does that get noted? Yes. But, Gettleman was in the position to get the hate. He's now in position to get the credit. Trader Dave, as you so aptly referred to him as earlier, I think killed draft day, the first 2.
Yeah, it was. I thought he did a nice job. The fun thing with Tony, so they take Kadarius Toney at 20. The fun thing with him is he doesn't even know how to really run routes yet. Like, I watch his tape and I think, wow, this is a lot of raw talent. And if he could ever figure out how to run routes, this guy is going to be really, really good. And you bring up the point about Daniel Jones, and this is the biggest thing the Giants have to figure out next year, whether they win or not. You went out and you drafted Toney. You got Kenny Golladay earlier in free agency. You have now a receiving core with Golladay, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton, Evan Ingram, who a lot of talent, but can be frustrating at times with the drops and the fumbles. You now have given Daniel Jones a lot of help. Now, I will say in fairness, haven't done a ton to address the offensive line. And that is still a concern, even though they showed some improvement last year from what they had done in 2019. But Daniel Jones now, there's not a lot in terms of excuses for him, The one I could think of is if the offensive line were to stink again and he doesn't have time to throw, then what happens? But this is maybe not a make or break year for Daniel Jones, but if it's not, it's close. And this is a team now that, because Washington did not take a quarterback, because the Eagles are in cap hell and just frankly don't have a very good roster, and because the Dallas Cowboys are somewhat unpredictable, it's kind of win the division, go to the playoffs or bust. After what you saw last year with Washington going 7-9 and winning the division, you're now going out there, if you're the Giants, and you're thinking, okay, this is our year. You've got a third-year quarterback who you think is going to take the leap. You've got a receiving core who's really good. And now I think your expectation is you got to win the division. Otherwise, there are going to be some pretty big institutional changes that are made. So I think this is a huge year coming up for the Giants. They have drafted as such. They have signed as such with Kenny Golladay and Adoree Jackson. And I think this is basically go to the playoffs or bust now for the New York Giants.
Well, you spoke about, again, Gettleman potentially not being here to make those picks. Talking about previous picks made by Gettleman, Daniel Jones, right? That's not Joe Judge's guy. Joe Judge came here, grew to like Daniel Jones, I assume for the exact same reasons Dave Gettleman drafted him. Smart kid, very hard worker, very dedicated to getting better, very dedicated to being a leader and trying to be a better leader and good teammate. I hear nothing but good things about Daniel Jones, the guy, the football player off the field. The problem is that on the field, the production hasn't been where you want it to be yet, despite all these other factors, So you have these excuses for Jones that have existed. As you said, eliminating them is the key to getting a true evaluation on him. And I think that's only fair to Daniel if you're Joe Judge, is to really see what he's got. I don't think Jones played poorly enough this past season to merit just needing to move on. But I got to throw you a quick question that just to go on the pass here. If you're running the Giants, do you take Fields when he's on the board? And do you just go with Fields, Golladay, and all these guys, or would you have ridden with Danny as well?
Yeah, because it's only year 3. I mean, he's played 24 games in 2 years, right? So he's only played like a year and a half, whatever it may be with the injuries or whatever else has transpired. So yeah, I would give Daniel Jones another year. I mean, I think Justin Fields is a bit of a project, right? If you're going to take a quarterback, if you're the New York Giants, that guy is probably playing right away, or close to it. And Justin Fields, at least to me, is not quite that. It might wind up working out that way in Chicago. We'll see what happens. But I think they did the right thing. They had their guys in mind. The receivers, went off the board, both the Alabama guys, Waddle and Smith, as you said. And they liked Tony, and they probably liked a couple other guys. But when they went down to 20 and those guys were still there, it was, okay, let's take Kadarius Toney and let's call it a day. So yeah, I would ride with Daniel Jones here. I think they're making the right call for this year, because I don't think 24 games is enough to properly evaluate a quarterback. How many quarterbacks have we seen be late bloomers? It's not always the case that a guy goes into halfway through year 1 or year 2 and it just clicks. He just gets it. So I think Daniel Jones, you have to give him that chance, and then if he doesn't demonstrate it this year, then you think about moving on from him in the offseason.
I also think when you're watching college tape, Daniel Jones's college tape does not jump out to me as this guy's going to come in and light up the league. He's a guy who can definitely accurately throw a deep ball and who knows how to throw a football, who is way more mobile than given credit for. He can do football stuff. He can do football stuff. He just needs to do it well and consistently well for a whole season. And my definition of well might not be the same as a lot of other Giants fans. I know when in-house, it's easy to see your young guys and just know what you think they can accomplish. I really just need Danny to to do his job this year. Like if you're limiting the turnovers and just getting some touchdowns, just keeping the offense moving, and our strong defense helps keep us in games like that, that's fine. Like we just can't stink. Like we got to be a good football team. I think that we have the talent to be good if Daniel does his job, is the point I'm really trying to make.
Yeah, you've got a good defense. You've got, a decent roster. I'm not going to say, a great roster at this point, but I think a decent roster, certainly better than last year. And now you just got to figure out, if you can use it. If Daniel Jones is a good complement to this defense and the way they're going to play next year, is the defense going to be as good? See what happens. But enough of the Jets. I like saying enough of the Jets. Enough of the Giants. Let's move on to the rest of this draft. Headlines coming up. Michael Calamari joins us next. Going to talk some of the quarterbacks who were taken in this draft. Good, bad, otherwise. Getting into all that coming up next. One-on-one, taking you up until 2 a.m., 90.7 FM, Facebook, YouTube. Stay with us.
Be sure to follow WFUV Sports on all of our social media platforms. At WFUV Sports on Twitter, at WFUV_sports on Instagram, and WFUV Sports on Facebook and YouTube. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Welcome back to One-on-One, everyone, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. I'm Michael Calamari, bringing you the headlines throughout the night. Now, the NFL draft had a flurry of quarterbacks drafted in the first round, leading with Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson going 1 and 2, respectively. However, the story was Trey Lance going third to San Francisco. Mac Jones was the favorite to go third entering Thursday before the 49ers took a Lance. As mentioned previously, Justin Fields was the next quarterback taken when the Bears traded up with the Giants for the 11th pick. Mac Jones was the last quarterback of the bunch to go, going 15th to New England Patriots. Now, Jimmy, I'm going to start with you. What is your reaction to how the quarterbacks went Thursday night, especially with what the 49ers did in taking Lance over Fields and Jones?
49ers had a really interesting conundrum here. They, at least if you listen to Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, they really had their guy from January or February on. They knew that Trey Lance was going to be their guy. He was their number one on the board. He solidified that in the pro day and his interview. So the thing with Trey Lance is he's really not ready to play right now. Like, you're not going to – no team is going to throw him out there week one if they have the choice. The 49ers have Jimmy Garoppolo. And the thing about Garoppolo is when he plays, the 49ers win. Like, he's won 75% of his games in San Francisco and as a pro as well. But specifically in San Francisco, they are 22-8 to be exact when he plays. And this is a guy who was really one throw away from winning the Super Bowl in 2019 with the 49ers. The problem is he's hurt all the time. And the thing that slightly concerns me about the situation that Lance is going into is if Garoppolo were to get hurt, like he did last year, he only played 6 games, like 2018 when he only played 3 games, Lance would have to play right away. Is that the best thing for him? I don't know. Now, he's also not going to entirely learn by sitting on the bench either, but, you know, he's still got some work to do to be ready for the NFL game. I do ultimately think he'll be good, and I think he's going to a really nice situation, and I'm happy for him on that front. But if something were to happen to Jimmy Garoppolo, now you are thrust into a very difficult situation if you're the San Francisco 49ers. So on paper, you say, yeah, that's great. He could sit behind Jimmy G for a year like what Patrick Mahomes did with Alex Smith. He can learn, and he can get good that way. But on the other hand, you know, he's a heartbeat away. And you want to make sure that you aren't doing wrong by him if you wind up throwing him out there at some point in year one, even though that definitely is not the 49ers' plan for this coming season.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. I think what's really interesting about this is when I look at all these guys, Fields, Mac Jones, Trey Lance, and I'm looking at their film, Trey Lance might have the best talent out of all 3 of these guys. And it's tough because he's North Dakota State, and he's not a guy you're watching a lot on Saturdays. And he hasn't played in a while. I mean, the last time he's had a full season, he lit it up 28 touchdowns, no interceptions, but we didn't see him with the COVID year. So I think there's a lot to be said about how he's going to make the transition to the NFL. And I think he's a guy who really has to sit out a year. I mean, he has elite athleticism, great frame. He's 6'4". And I mean, he can run. I mean, he's a dynamic playmaker, this guy. So I think if it was if you want to take the shot for him, he's got the highest ceiling out of anybody in this draft. So for that reason, I like what the 49ers did, but I also see if you want a game-ready guy who can be there if Jimmy G goes down. Like you mentioned, Mac Jones is a perfect fit for a Shanahan scheme. I mean, a lot of dump-offs in that scheme. I mean, 22.5% of Jones' passing yards came off RPOs and screens in college. So I think that says a lot about his type of play style. It's 11% higher than Trey Lance, 14% higher than Fields. That's more of a fit for the Shanahan scheme. But I think a talent like Trey Lance, if he ends up turning out to be what we hope he would be, is obviously the better player. It all depends on if Jimmy G can be the quarterback for 2 years or so and stay healthy before it's ready for Trey Lance to take over.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you talk about Mac Jones. Like, I have to give the 49ers credit for this. That was an all-time smokescreen that they had with making people think that they were going to take Mac Jones. I mean, that they made it seem like they had settled on Jones at 3, and everybody was kind of roasting them for it. And then they pulled the switcheroo, and they went with Trey Lance, who it seemed like they wanted all along. So I have to give the 49ers a lot of credit through this process. And it's also, I mean, it's insurance, right? This team, as I said, when Jimmy G plays, they win. When anybody else plays, they lose, and they lose a lot. So, you know, to go out there to get a guy in Trey Lance who, as you said, Mike, really high ceiling, can be really, really good in this league. Kudos to them for that. And I think ultimately it will wind up being a good move. And look, they took a risk. And in the NFL, if you want a quarterback in the draft and you're not in that, you know, top handful of picks, sometimes you do have to take risks. And the 49ers did that. We'll see if it pays off. But, I mean, this guy, they are raved about him on the field. They've raved about him off the field. And I think it's a pretty good fit for what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be interesting how it plays out. Now, the other guy I want to get to is we touched on him a little bit in the last segment when we talked about New York Giants, but Justin Fields going 11th to the Chicago Bears. Obviously, they trade up to get him there. Kris, I want to know what are your thoughts about that. Do you like the move? You mentioned how you really think Fields was the guy. Do you think he's going to be a good fit in Chicago, though? Your thoughts?
I think every single quarterback at the top of this draft, like, inarguably landed with the team that is a good fit for them, except for Justin Fields. This is the one where I think, we'll see. Wilson, Jets are tailor-making that team around the kid. Lance, before I started connecting teams to prospects, my takes on Lance were the talent's there. You need to have time. You need to have a veteran to play in his rookie year, even, whatever. I would hope just rookie year. And you need to have the coaching staff that you believe in. Niners, check. Talent across the board. Garoppolo, Shanahan, great pick for them. Jones to the Patriots, we talked about a bit at the top of the show as being a good fit as well. Fields, though, the Bears took because they went up and grabbed him. He wasn't the one of several top quarterbacks that happened to slide just right to their pick, and they took advantage of it. They had to go capitalize on how the draft was playing out. Fields' fit in Chicago is going to come down to where they go from here. And I think that's because right now they have a lot of remnants of previous, rosters, previous teams that just didn't make it. The arrival of Fields is a sign that it's going to be time for a new era here of Bears football. You have a guy like Mac on the defensive side of things that can always make plays. It's about getting together an offense that can respectably and consistently score points. Even with Allen Robinson on the team for seasons, that the team's been struggling to move the ball. It's Fields who should be able to help with that, but it's on the Bears to surround him with the right pieces. So Robinson, Mooney, Miller, that's a good wide receiver core. But they might be smart to look for a burner, to go look for someone to take the top off the defense, and potentially even a switch at running back going forward. I don't know if Montgomery is who they want. So interesting with Fields, going to Chicago. I think Fields' issue, and Jimmy brought this up, that we talked about it before the show. Wilson has trouble making a decision sometimes. Fields makes decisions very quickly. It's whether or not they're the right ones that tend to matter. And I think Chicago has the ability to foster an environment that Fields can, as I said, grow up in the NFL. They have Robinson, whether they find a way to keep him or get another, premium talent at wide receiver. Fields isn't in a terrible spot. But it's up to this team right now to really get things moving over the next season, especially next offseason. Look at what the Dolphins did with Tua. So that they went and got him his weapon in Waddle this draft. But, next offseason's got to be the latest point at which the Bears really start looking into upgrading weapons and bringing this roster to a better spot.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I definitely agree with a lot of things. I think something worries me about Chicago is that line, and I think Fields struggles under pressure. And they got a tackle out of Oklahoma State in the second round. I think that could help, but there's definitely some worries with that line. They struggle big time at the tackle position, and I don't think the wide receiver weapons make up for that, where Fields is still going to have to create a lot if that line's not giving him time to throw. So I think that puts a lot of pressure on him to be the guy from day one, and that worries me a little bit about the fit. So I'm yet to see how that's going to turn out. That would be my biggest thing with Fields. I would have liked him to go to a situation that's more secure with the better offensive line and better weapons. And I think that would give him the best chance to flourish. I think you can say that about any quarterback, but especially with Fields' case, I would have liked him to go to a better situation than Chicago. I think he's going to go in there and he's going to be expected to be the guy. And I'm not sure if he'll be able to take that mantle right away. I think that's the biggest concern I have for him moving forward.
Yeah, and I think there is also a lot to be said in this situation with the way the Bears are going about desperation. This is a team that traded up to 11, traded up in the second round, Like, they have given up some capital. Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy probably both thinking their jobs are on the line this year. And they get the quarterback. They had Andy Dalton, who they brought in free agency. And I just look, it's the desperation. It's also the infrastructure, right? There's always the conversation that everyone has. What would Patrick Mahomes look like with bad infrastructure, right? Like, if you put Mitch Trubisky on the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in Chicago, what would that look like? Now, I'm still privy to think that a guy like Patrick Mahomes is such an insane talent that he'd make it work. But bad infrastructure ruins quarterbacks. Mitch Trubisky could have been a lot better served going to a better situation. Chicago was not that. And it stayed that way when Matt Nagy came in. And I think you're going to have that conversation, I think, unfortunately, with Justin Fields, assuming this regime stays in place. Is it a good infrastructure? I don't think it is. Is it the best place for him to learn? I don't think it is. So I think it's a tough spot for him to be in. I like Justin Fields a lot. I had him number 3 on my quarterback board behind Wilson and Lawrence. But, Chicago is not a very good place for him to go. And I'm worried about it. I am. I just, with their recent history, particularly with Trubisky, it concerns me. It concerns me a lot.
Yeah, I think there's definitely cause for concern. And there's one thing with Fields that I think he's going to struggle with at the next level is the ups and downs he had throughout his career. I mean, talk about he looked like he was the best quarterback in all of college football when he played Clemson in the Sugar Bowl, 22 for 28, threw 6 touchdowns that game. So he has those games, and then there's games like when he played Northwestern. I mean, 2 interceptions, no touchdown passes, 12 for 27. So those ups and downs might come back to haunt him, and I think that's going to be where he might run into trouble with Chicago. That's going to not have great weapons, and it's going to have not the greatest offensive line there for him. So I think that's something that's going to be interesting to see. How is he going to be able to adjust to those ups and downs?
Yeah, and, that's a very good point. And also, the very legitimate question, how much is he going to play? I mean, you got Andy Dalton there. You've got a team that wants to go to the playoffs, probably needs to go to the playoffs for certain people to stay. Does Justin Fields give him a better chance than Andy Dalton right now? I don't know. I'm very unsure about that. So that's why I think Chicago's a really tough spot for him to go. I mean, look, he seems like a really great kid, and we saw him in that Clemson game take the shot, keep playing. He's a tough guy, but yeah, this is not the best situation for him. And look, he'll go to work and he'll be happy to be there, I'm sure. But there's a lot of better places that he could have gone.
Definitely agree. And we're only going to have to see when it's week 1 and maybe it's Andy Dalton, maybe it's Justin Fields, but obviously hope for the best for Justin Fields, but it's yet to be seen if he can do what he did at Ohio State in the NFL. And the last guy I want to get into before we head to a break is Mac Jones. We touched on him earlier, but number 15 to New England. The Patriots have been in talks, rumors that was a guy they were eyeing at, potentially a trade up. You talked about how last show Andrew Posadas had New England making a call and making a deal for Mac Jones to get picked at 5, but New England doesn't trade up here. They get Mac Jones at 15. Jimmy, I want to know what your thoughts are on this move.
I like it in the fact that they didn't give anything up. He falls to you at 15. And as you said, when we did the show last week, Andrew had them trade up to 5, gave up a bunch of stuff. A bunch of other mock drafts I saw had them trading up to 8. That would have entailed them giving up quite a lot. But they're able to get their guy. He falls to them. They don't have to give anything up. And, yeah, it works out in that sense. I mean, Mac Jones is an accurate quarterback. We've seen him. He can be a good drop-back passer. I mean, you referenced the stat about the drop-offs and the short passes and the RPOs. But we also saw he can stand in there, sit in the pocket, make an accurate throw. And I think there's a lot of that in the Patriots scheme, and I think he'll be doing a lot of that. Again, there are the questions. Does he play ahead of Cam Newton? What's the situation exactly there? But I think they get the guy that they wanted, and they stay there. I think that's a pretty good deal for the Patriots, and that's one they'll take their chances with. So he fits in New England. The question is, does he make enough plays outside the pocket? I think that's a very fair question. But the accuracy is there. You watch his tape, and you can see it. And now, how will he adapt to the Josh McDaniels scheme? I think that's a very legitimate question.
I liked the Mac Jones pick. I did. And, you know, for the reasoning Jimmy started out with, the fact that he fell to them, you could consider it best player available. You could consider it, you know, quarterbacks get that premium on their position value, and maybe he was just number one on the board. I really think it's a nice fit there. You have Cam. Now you bring in this guy. You know, I try to separate the just size of the name of Alabama and what that all means. You've got a prospect coming in who can definitely, with the right coaching and again, if raised the right way in the big leagues, can become a quarterback who can start NFL games and play all four quarters. I mean, look at guys like Dalton. Look at guys like there are quarterbacks who don't do the most incredible physical activity out there on the field and still just get the job done. That's what Mac Jones screams to me, is like, this is going to be a guy who maybe has a funny interview here and there and just will get the job done. That's it. That's all there is, because he's not too complex of a prospect, for better or for worse. So there's not a lot there's not a lot hiding, I think, about Mac Jones. You know, someone like Trey Lance is getting drafted really on projection. For Mac, it's the fact that he did the job at Bama. He looks like he can do it in the league. I think it's that simple.
Yeah, I think what a lot of people are missing with this move, though, is that, I mean, Mac Jones was in the perfect situation with Alabama. I mean, you talk about Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith as those wide receivers. If you look at the Patriots wide receiver core next year, he's going from that to Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, I mean, Jacoby Myers. These are not those two guys. They're not Devontae Smith. They're not Jalen Waddle. So it's going to be a wake-up call for him in the NFL. And obviously, I don't think he's going to be the starter day one, but maybe he's going to Bill Belichick and that's a fit. But the talent around him in New England is not Alabama. So I think for a lot of people who love this pick, I mean, Mac Jones has yet to prove himself with those kind of wide receivers, not the guys who are Heisman winners. So that's really interesting to me, how he's going to make that adjustment.
Well, he's thrown to the law firm, Jacoby and Myers. Sorry, I just realized that. So I'm going to drag you through it now that I just realized it. He does have the two good tight ends, though, Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, that they both.
Yeah, he got those are some easy targets.
I don't know why they signed both of them, but
Belichick loves his tight ends.
I know. He loves having that two tight end system. How that works out, I don't know. A lot of teams are going away from that, but nonetheless, Mike, good stuff. Thank you. A lot more to get to on this show. And maybe the biggest story around the NFL draft right now is that of Aaron Rodgers. Does he stay? Does he go? Does he quit? What's he going to do? We'll see. Mike's going to join us to talk about that next. Aaron Rodgers potentially going somewhere else, potentially leaving altogether. We'll get into it next. One-on-one, New York's longest running sports call-in show. We'll be right back.
To support the WFUV Sports Department, visit support.wfuv.org to become a member or make a one-time donation. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
It's WFUV and WFUV HD, New York. Listener-supported public media from Fordham, the Jesuit University of New York. Right here on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org. This is One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org.
Back on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show, taking you up until 2 a.m. on 90.7 FM, Facebook, and YouTube. A lot more to get to in this show. Dave Parker joins us to start the next hour. A lot of baseball, basketball to get into as well. But the biggest news story of the week in sports broke on Thursday afternoon. I saw the tweet from from Adam Schefter, I should say. Got a little ahead of myself there. Adam Schefter tweeted out around 3 o'clock on Thursday afternoon. I'll have some breaking news on the other side of this break. Now, I didn't know we were doing, next at 11 tweets in this timeline. But when they came back on the air, he announced that the Packers and Aaron Rodgers were at an impasse in the contract negotiations. And Rodgers had told people in the organization that he did not want to come back. Now, the Packers general manager, Brian Gutekunst, has since said that they want to keep him. They're not trading Aaron Rodgers. They're committed to Aaron Rodgers. But nonetheless, what a huge story this is going to be if they wind up trading him. Michael Calamari and Kris Pursiainen joined me. Mike, I will go to you first. Your initial reaction to this story and hearing that maybe, just maybe, Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay.
I'm not surprised at all. I mean, I think a lot of this has been brewing ever since Jordan Love was taken over a wide receiver in the first round of last year's draft. I think that lit a fire into Rodgers, and that probably produced some of the best football we've seen out of him in years. But that didn't mean that the what he had against Green Bay for doing that in the draft went away, the resentment. So I think that came to a head now, and I'm not surprised he wants out, but the thing where I start to get thinking is, where is Rodgers going to go? I mean, he listed 3 possible destinations in a tweet that came out by Pro Football Talk. They said 49ers, Broncos, and Raiders were on Aaron Rodgers' list as of Wednesday night. And all those teams seem like there's not really a great fit for Rodgers. Obviously, the 49ers got their QB Thursday night. The Broncos don't look like they have a team that's ready to make a playoff run, even with a guy like Aaron Rodgers. And then the Raiders were successful with Derek Carr. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers is the superior quarterback, but are they willing to give up a lot to bring him in? So I just don't see a fit that makes sense for Rodgers to leave Green Bay. So I expect him to be back, but I am not surprised by how he has lashed out against Green Bay and this news that has come out recently.
Kris, I'll go to you next, but I'll just add in quickly here. I think it says something about the situation we're in here with these 3 teams. To me, Denver easily makes the most sense out of those 3. Yeah, the Raiders, as you said, have their quarterback. San Francisco now has got 2 quarterbacks. So Denver out of those 3 definitely makes the most sense. But Kris, I go to you. Your thoughts on this situation as Aaron Rodgers pulls a power play with the Green Bay Packers?
I think seeing it as a power play, as a negotiating tactic, is the correct lens to be looking through. Whether you still see it as something beyond repair, even through that lens, is fine and up to you. But I think you have to start by seeing this as part of negotiations. This is Aaron Rodgers. I say that to mean two things, that it's the football player, Aaron Rodgers, like the MVP, and then it's also Aaron Rodgers. So I'm not going to put it past him to have this relationship go real sour here. I also get it. The love pick was mentioned, the total lack of help. Besides, Adams, Tanyan kind of stepping into the limelight last season. Debatable talent there. Now talks about, guys like Will Fuller and whatever. It seems to me like this pairing is going to be over in a couple seasons at the latest. I think at some point Rodgers will just talk himself into, all right, that's really it. That's really it, because I've done so much complaining that I'm just going to go somewhere else. Maybe he'll regret going somewhere else, and maybe he won't. But I think it'll happen. I'm not sure about Denver. I feel like Aaron Rodgers could take a team like Denver to the playoffs, but that's besides the point. I think the fact that he can still do that now shows that he is the kind of guy that is worth having these conversations about. This isn't Melvin Gordon holding out. This is Aaron Rodgers potentially on the move. It's gigantic news.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I do just want to kind of push back on the point about him and the help that he's gotten. You've got an all-pro wide receiver in Devontae Adams, an all-pro left tackle in David Bakhtiari, a Pro Bowl running back in Aaron Jones. You've got talent in other places as well, right? Marquez Valdez-Scantling is kind of a burner. Alan Lazard had a pretty good year last year. Robert Tonyan is a really good tight end. Like he has options. What I'm trying to figure out is what situation he could go to that would be better than Green Bay right now. He goes to the NFC Championship game last year, and you could say whatever you want about what they did late in that game. They should not have kicked the field goal for a number of different reasons. Obviously, they mismanaged that. Obviously, they probably should not have taken Jordan Love with the 26th pick in 2020, which they traded up for, which is also a problem. But the idea that they somehow have not helped him out at all, I don't think that's true. And I also don't think that he's going to find a situation, whether he goes beyond those three teams he listed off or not, that is better than Green Bay right now. I mean, this is probably his best chance to win another Super Bowl, is staying in Green Bay. As much as he hates everyone's guts in that organization, at some point you have to simmer down and say, okay, yeah, but at this point in my career, this gives me the best chance. And look, it can feel like mashing your head against the wall when you go to the NFC Championship game back-to-back years and you don't get it done. I get that, and I get that it's frustrating, but I don't know. I think if he wants to continue playing, and there was another report last night that he would consider retiring. But if he wants to keep playing, the best chance he's got is the Packers. And so I don't understand why he would work a trade anywhere else. To me, it's either you play for the Packers or you don't play at all if he wants to win a Super Bowl. But that's just how I look at it.
Yeah, Jimmy, that's a great point. I mean, I don't see a wide receiver on any of these teams that's better than Adams. I mean, he's obviously superior, and Rodgers makes weapons. I mean, he has turned Lazard and those guys into suitable wide receiver 3s and 2s. So I think Green Bay is obviously the best option. I mean, I'm looking at possible other destinations, maybe Cleveland if they are unhappy with Baker, but he's looked really good recently, so I don't think they're going to move on from him. Washington is looking for a quarterback, obviously. I mean, they re-signed Taylor Heineke, but they're moving on from Alex Smith. They're a great defense. Maybe they look for a guy like Rodgers, but I don't see either of those teams looking to give up what the Rodgers price will be, which is going to be probably multiple first-round picks. And if not, it's going to be a lot of 2s and a lot of 3s in addition to at least one first-round pick. So I just don't see a trade being able to happen here. And as much as Rodgers might want out, I think this all might be a game on his part to get the contract extension he's been looking for. Green Bay wants to reconstruct the contract. Rodgers wants a full extension. So I think this might be his way of sending that message to Green Bay, working through social media. I think the only place that probably would have made the most sense was San Francisco, but I think that ship has sailed since draft night, and now it's going to be getting him back to Green Bay, which I think is almost a certainty heading into entering the 2021 season, unless something crazy happens. I would be shocked if he leaves Green Bay, but I'm not shocked he has expressed this resentment against Green Bay.
I'll throw one team out there that is unlikely, that is not on that list that he threw out there. Miami. They got the picks. They've got weapons. They've got a very good defense. Could they make a move? And I know it seems to be in the opposite direction as where he seemingly wants to go, because he's from Northern California, and apparently he wants to maybe play closer to home. But football-wise, I can't find a situation that probably makes more sense outside of Green Bay than Miami right now, I think.
Could be a Buccaneers situation with Brady.
Right.
I mean, that's what I think of immediately.
Yeah. I mean, even him going to Denver would be a Buccaneers situation, right? There's a lot of parallels. You have a division. Yeah, but you have a division where you've got a great quarterback, right, Patrick Mahomes. The Saints ostensibly had that in Drew Brees, and then he got hurt, and then he went downhill. You have a team that is going to rule the division, right? On the one hand, the Saints. On the other hand, the Kansas City Chiefs. You have a lot of young, fun weapons that Denver has, right? Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, Noah Fant. The Buccaneers have that with probably a little better with Evans and Godwin, and they brought in Antonio Brown. There's a lot of parallels there where, he could go to the playoffs each year if he goes to Denver, but is that a worthwhile use of his time to finagle his way over there, not win the Super Bowl every year? And to me, it's a lateral move. It's a lateral move. I do actually believe, though, he does not want to come back to Green Bay. I actually do believe that. I don't see that as necessarily a contract negotiating tactic. I genuinely believe he just wants out. I think it's a pride thing. Rodgers behaves in his pettiness a lot the same way Michael Jordan did, right? Like you have the meme where it's, I took that personally. Rodgers, it's the same way. And I genuinely don't believe he wants to come back to Green Bay. But, I mean, Chris, I'll get your thoughts on it, but I genuinely don't. I genuinely think this is over. I don't think this is a negotiating tactic. I really do believe he's done.
It's tough. It's tough to get a read on, obviously, without just knowing as many details as you'd like to. But I believe that something can get worked out. There's too many instances of just disgruntled players coming to terms with where they are. However, the fact that Rodgers is as good as he is and has spent as many years as he has there kind of puts him in a position where if he really, really wants out, we'd get it. We'd understand it, I guess. But as you're saying, Green Bay just on paper continues to make the most sense. However, relationships with coaches, GMs, whoever, scouts, clearly does not like the scouts because they keep not helping him. But it might just be at the point where he's been showing up to work there every day for too long, and he's in a position where he demands a lot of respect, attention, money, power, within the team, and he's just might not be able to repair those bridges. They might just be burnt.
The only thing I can think of, though, is I don't think there's a single person in Green Bay that doesn't view Rodgers as their guy. And I think even everyone in the organization understands that Rodgers is the Packers. He's like the heir to Brett Favre, and he's their quarterback. I'm not sure if he gets that at another place. I mean, he can end his career a Packer, and even though there's been a little friction between him and the front office, I think that's the best place for him to leave his legacy. I don't think Denver does that for him. I don't think the Las Vegas Raiders does that for him. I don't see another place giving Rodgers that attention more than Green Bay already does. And you can say that maybe they haven't built around him the team that he would have wanted, but he's got Adams. He's got a pretty solid offensive line. He's got a great running game. I honestly think that Green Bay is the best situation for him. I don't see them being another place. And I think, like Jimmy, you said, it's a lateral move. I mean, he's really going to have to – I don't see him getting more than 13 wins, which was where he had in Green Bay last season, in another place. I really don't see that happening. So I don't understand if this is a winning move, then Green Bay is obviously the place he should stay. But if this is just, I'm done with this team, then he's going to go somewhere and sacrifice wins if he makes that move.
I will say too, and I cannot believe after 4 years of Fordham that I am saying this sentence on one-on-one. There's one more wild card here. And that is that a couple weeks ago, he was the guest host on Jeopardy. He did a really good job. And he might have a shot at it. Who knows? Now, he has said that he could do both. But, if you're him, you could sit there and you could get paid $20, $30 million a year and get absolutely drilled in the pocket and take huge hits and risk your health. Or you could get paid $10 million a year, read answers in the form of questions, not get hit, not risk your health. I'm just saying, from his point of view, there's a sense to that. And if he were to retire,
Aaron Rodgers is a football psychopath.
No
way he doesn't want to win more games.
No
way he doesn't want to win more games.
I'm putting it out there, and I'm not saying it's mutually exclusive, by the way. I will also say that guy who wrote his response when he said who wanted to kick the field goal, if that guy changes the NFL offseason, I'm going to laugh. So I hope he's doing well wherever he is. But anywho.
Shout out that guy.
Yeah, I love that guy. Aaron Rodgers, maybe not out of Green Bay. I think he is, but we'll see what winds up happening. We're staying on the NFL draft. Ton to talk about with the NFL draft. A lot going on. We're going to react to some of the picks, some of the good ones, some of the not so good ones. Coming up next, stay with us. One-on-one, taking you up until 2 a.m. We'll be right back.
Be sure to check out all of our latest podcasts on WFUVsports.org or wherever you get your shows, including NFL Friday, Nosebleeds, Pick and Pod, 5 on 3, College Gridiron, and FUV FC. Also, our newest edition, Off the Air, diving into the station's legacy with its most prominent alumni. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Still got over 90 minutes to go here on One on One. Taking you up until 2 a.m. 90.7 FM, Facebook, YouTube. Glad you're with us. Kris Pursiainen and Jimmy Sullivan with you here tonight. Just want to update the Jets. They have taken a running back in round 4. Michael Carter out of North Carolina goes to the Jets. They continue to shore up the offense. So another offensively oriented skill position pick by Joe Douglas. And maybe another good one. We'll see what winds up happening there. But, Kris, a lot going on over the first couple of rounds of the NFL draft. So I put this to you. Besides what we've talked about, I want you to give me a pick that you really liked, that you sit there and you say, okay, that was really solid. That team really helped itself a lot with that pick. If I was to put that to you, what do you think that would be?
Well, what jumps right out of my brain without me even having to think about it is the Detroit Lions just sitting there at number 7 and getting Penei Sewell. Some mixed opinions on Sewell and Slater in terms of that debate. A good amount of analysts with Slater over Sewell, but I'm not one of them. If I am an analyst, that is because I think Sewell is a can't-miss prospect. He's up there with Pitts. For me, in regards to this draft, like, these guys are going to be very, very good at what they are supposed to do. And you can be quite sure of that. Like, that's why you take them that high. They're going to show up to your team. They're going to do the job, and they're going to do it well. So obviously we're at the top pick. I mean, a great spot for the Lions to be in, for Waddle and Chase to go so that they could steal Sewell at 7.
So you took Sewell. I'll take Slater with the Chargers at 13. You're protecting Justin Herbert. You've got a star quarterback. You've got good weapons around him. And now it's a matter of getting the offensive line in order. And I like the Chargers doing that a lot. Tom Telesco let it fall to him at 13. They take Rashawn Slater, who he can play tackle, he can play guard. They can put him basically wherever they want to put him. And it remains to be seen where they will. But I like that move a lot. I think they will be in really good shape because of that. He'll be a plug and play on that offensive line, and he'll be really solid. So good on the Chargers, letting Rashawn Slater fall to them at 13. I did not think he was going to fall at 13. I thought the Panthers were going to take him at 8, and they took J.C. Horn, the corner out of South Carolina. That surprised me a bit.
I had the Panthers-Slater connection rumbling in my head too.
Yeah, I was doing the War Room last week, and of course things went a little sideways on that for a couple of different reasons. But I was like, I'm going to sit here. I was acting as the Panthers at 8, and I said, well, I'm going to take Slater because that's who's around. Because there's no way Pitts and Sewell are going to be around, and then I wound up taking Pitts because he was around. But the Falcons wind up taking him with the number 4 pick. All right, so we got the positive stuff out of the way. Now,
oh boy,
give me a pick. I'll go with you first. Was there a pick or a couple of picks? Was there anything that you didn't like, that you saw a team take somebody and you said, oh my goodness, what are they doing? Why did they waste the first round pick on that? What was that for you?
Man, I don't know about waste the first round pick, but the Las Vegas Raiders made it kind of tough to escape scrutiny when they took Alex Leatherwood at, what was it, 17 overall. Yeah, that's just it's a little bit early. Mike Mayock said he knew it would be controversial. Mayock, analyzing picks for years, obviously understands the perception, and he went and took Cleveland Farrell at number 4 in his first draft in Las Vegas. So Mayock, clearly a general manager, kind of reminds me of, to switch leagues here, the Phoenix Suns, just kind of grabbing who they want in the first round, who they think will fit their team best. And not caring at all about who the best player available is. I certainly would not employ that philosophy. The Raiders also seem to draft a lot of Clemson, Bama, Georgia, etc. products. This goes along with that. I just don't know if Leatherwood had the tools, the production. I think he's a really good second round option. He's a really, really good early second round. Like, all right, let's go get 17.
Can I read the ESPN graphic when they did the get to know Alex Leatherwood? Can I just read this real quick?
No,
Hometown Pensacola, Florida. Played for former Heisman Trophy winner Charlie Ward and former Nick at Booker T. Washington High School in Florida. First team All-American selection in 2020. And my personal favorite, known as a meme connoisseur, Leatherwood has over 1,000 memes saved on his phone. They took a guy off the timeline. I couldn't believe it. It when they did that.
Memes is, I can't even come up with an on-the-spot spin of how an NFL team might. Would it be like, no, I can't do it. I've got nothing, Jimmy. I've got no ridiculous, audacious way to spin this into an NFL trait. I don't. But a welcome inclusion to his prospect profile because it's become a meme itself.
Well, I thought the Eagles might have gotten that out of it when they were playing, rock, paper, scissors, or
right. Yeah.
Yeah. They find out this stuff. Okay. They get to the bottom of it. But yeah, that was a surprise to me. I almost lost my train of thought who I was going to pick here. So I got two for you that I didn't like at the end of the first round. Number one, Pittsburgh Steelers, Najee Harris. Now, a lot of people like that pick. But here's the problem with the Steelers. They didn't run the ball well last year, not because there wasn't talent in the running back room. They had James Conner, they had Benny Snell, both of whom are solid backs. Conner's in Arizona now. They didn't run the ball well last year because their offensive line didn't create much room. Their first contact rates were high. They didn't give their running backs a lot of room to operate. And when you have an aging Ben Roethlisberger possibly going into his final season, you need to have a good offensive line to protect him and also to create room for the running game. The offense became very one-dimensional second half of last year. That's why they get bounced in the playoffs in the first round. You pick up Najee Harris, and he'll be good. I like Najee Harris a lot. I don't have anything against the player, but I don't get why you wouldn't improve the offensive line in that position. So that's what I don't understand. Second one I'll give you. The pick right after that, Jacksonville Jaguars, Travis Etienne. Again, I don't get it. You've got 1,000-yard running back in James Robinson, who you didn't draft. You have, other guys you could use as running backs. You have another first-round pick to try to surround Trevor Lawrence with something meaningful. And you take a guy in Travis Etienne, who they have said is their third down running back in the first round. I mean, what is this? Like, I've never seen anything like that. I mean, I get that they have a new regime. Urban Meyer's new to the NFL. He's not used to drafting. He's not used to all of this. He's used to a college mindset of things, which is very different than drafting for the NFL. But yeah, I don't like it.
That's not an excuse.
No, I know. I'm just.
If I'm used to ordering bacon cheeseburgers, Jimmy, I can't show up to the ice cream parlor asking for sesame seed buns. Like, it's just not like you can't. It's not an excuse. You gotta use your noggin, man. You can't. It's just terrible value. It's terrible value. I'll say, in regards to the Steelers, that I think Connor is like way worse than advertised, because when you're in that building, the weekly fear that he gets hurt has to not help. Like, that has to lead to instability. It's unfortunate that he does get hurt, but it happens often enough for it to genuinely be concerning. As a very passionate fantasy football team general manager, I had James Conner on my squad last year and was ready to have a heart attack every single time his name popped up on my phone. I mean, I was like, oh, that's it. He's out for the season. All right, there goes my RB2. Alvin, it's just you now. I mean, it was tough. I get it. So I get wanting to upgrade that position. But now let's step back, because there's no excuse for not being like the Kansas City Chiefs and taking a running back in the first round. You don't do it. You don't do it. You can go. It's just such a replaceable position, man. You can really go get a retired veteran if you got a nice line and a nice coach and a quarterback that can play. You can go grab a retired veteran, tell him to get back in shape, and they can start for you at running back. It's not because the position is useless. It's because the game is so much about the trenches, in my opinion, that you just need someone athletic to take advantage of it. You know, it's different when you've got a game breaker like Kamara or C-Mac or Quan out on the field, but Najee Harris is not moving that needle for me. Yeah, Neither is Etienne, and Etienne was my number one back on the board too. And I just,
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't get it. I think there's really like three running backs to me: Kamara, C-Mac, Derrick Henry. That's probably it that I would sit there and I say, okay, yeah, those guys worth all the value. I mean, Alvin Kamara carried the Saints offense last year. Christian McCaffrey, we've seen can do that. Derrick Henry, same thing. So those are the guys I would make the exception for. Otherwise, no. Also, just one more note: if you think your RB2s were bad, wait until you see mine. I've got you beat there. I was playing like Frank Gore by week 3. So
Jimmy. Oh man.
I made the playoffs. I don't know how, but I made the playoffs. So nonetheless, some good, some bad out of the NFL draft. The good news is we're sitting here evaluating all this now. Not much evaluation really to do, seriously, until these guys take the field. So long way to go before we can really start to draw conclusions about this draft. And I think in all the dialogue and rhetoric you will hear about it in the coming days, I just want everybody to remember that. With that being said, we got to get into some baseball. The Mets are not hitting. The Yankees are. Both are under 500. We'll get into it next. You're listening to One on One, New York's longest running sports call-in show, and we'll be right back.
One-on-One has a brand new YouTube channel. Subscribe to WFUV Sports to catch our simulcast Saturday nights and get notifications so you never miss another show. Miss the show? You can find on-demand segments, interviews, and highlights every week. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Back on One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show. After 12:40 a.m. here in the East. Reminder, we still got Dave Parker coming up. Some basketball talk to close out our show. But now it's time to get into some baseball. I am an avid New York Mets fan. Kris, I think you are the same, if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me. Okay.
Indeed, I am.
I'm sorry. But, yeah, Mets and Knicks. That's tough. Until this year. But.
Orange and blue.
Yeah, orange and blue all day. The New York Mets are not hitting right now at all. They scored 1 run last night, none on Wednesday against Boston, 1 on Tuesday against Boston. They had gone 20 innings without scoring a run, which is pathetic. And they are now 9-11 in the NFC East. Oh my gosh, the NL East. I'm sorry. And funny thing about the NL East right now, nobody's above 500. But the New York Mets have not been able to take advantage of that, build a lead in the division because they have not been hitting. And it's everyone. Up and down the lineup. They're struggling big time. It's been an issue. Kris, you're the Mets fan here. I'll go to you first. Are you worried about the way this lineup has performed the first month of the season?
Jimmy, you're asking me to lie on the radio. I want to say no. I want to say no so badly. I'd like to say that the Mets have the talent in the building, the resources, the ability in the building right now to pull this all together and make it work. I have trouble being like it's going to happen. Something about this team though screams resilience to me, and then it's not showing. Like you got guys like Pete and Dom who are, to me, the heart of New York baseball. I mean, obviously the Yankees from an international perspective are the team, but in my heart, it's Alonso and Smith and McNeil. Recently, Lindor, despite the unfortunate on-field results, just from the club altogether, I think there has to be something else to happen. And whether that's, I don't want to suggest it even, but like the firing of someone like Chili Davis, I forget often as a sports fan who really assimilated into the world of modern sports and learning about them through games like NBA 2K and Madden, that like you can't always just throw the talent together and voila, got something's not giving for the Mets right now. I think they have guys like they have dudes. It's just a matter of cleaning up the bats, just getting the bats to start buzzing. I don't know what the plan is in the front office to address this. I don't know if they're looking at, Mike and I spoke about this when we hosted one-on-one nightly together a few weeks back, potentially bringing in someone like Kris Bryant. I don't know what's in the plans, the potential plans, the wishes for the Mets, but it has to be something that will provide a little shock of lightning to the organization, whether it be an acquisition, whether it be a firing, whether something's got to give here, because I believe that we do have the ability to make it work. I just don't know with the situation we're in right now that it will roll itself into a working one at some point.
Well, you thought you had that in the offseason with Lindor, and he's hitting 189 with one home run. So you thought you brought that in. You thought you made that shock move, and it just hasn't worked out.
Yeah, I think what's if I just jump in here. I mean, I'm not the Met fan here. Obviously, Jimmy, Chris, you guys are the Met fans, but when I look at this team on paper, they are very talented. I mean, this is a team that's poised to make a run in this division. And this division, quite frankly, is wide open. I don't think Atlanta's been nearly as good as a lot of us thought they would be this year. The Phillies are at the top of the division. They're 13-13. I mean, the Mets are a game back of first place in this division. I know it's really early, and I know there's a lot of baseball left to be played, over 130 games left. But I think the Mets are in position to make a run. They're on a 3-game skid, obviously, but when you have Jacob deGrom and Marcus Stroman pitching as well as their pitching, and even Taijuan Walker, who's been a surprise this year, you're getting Carrasco back supposedly in a week, and then when Syndergaard comes down near All-Star break, I mean, the pitching is going to be there. Obviously, maybe the bullpen side of it, not as much, but the starting rotation is just as good as maybe any in the MLB. I think you can make the comparison to even the Dodgers and San Diego. So I think for those reasons, the Mets are going to be contenders in this division. I just think it's the lineup. And this is the same lineup that led the league in batting average last year. Last year, there were a lot of problems about runners in scoring position and batting average with runners in scoring position. But this year, the problem is really just getting hits with guys like Lindor, McNeil struggling, both hitting under 200. And I think when this lineup starts to come together, the pitching's there. So if I'm a Met fan, I'm not too worried right now. This was a project. You went into this season knowing it wasn't going to be a right away, instantly going to work. But when you see guys like deGrom and Stroman lighting it up, you got to feel confident that eventually the lineup's going to come together and produce wins.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the top 3 starters for the Mets, they've been the best in baseball out of any top 3 of any team.
I think you can easily say that, yeah.
Walker, a 2.14 ERA. Stroman, who pitched on Friday night, 1.86. deGrom, 0.51. You can't ask for anything more than that. And that's why it's so frustrating that they're underwater right now. Because, look, as good as those guys have been, as good as Jacob deGrom is as the best player in baseball, as the best pitcher in baseball, I should say, it's not going to necessarily stay that way. Like, these guys are still going to be really good, I think, but there's going to be some kind of a regression. Now, at that point, you hope the offense has figured it out, but you don't want to play whack-a-mole where it's, on the one hand, great, the pitching's there, but the hitting's been terrible. Or maybe the hitting's good and the pitching's not there, like what we saw from the Mets last year. So that's what is frustrating right now, to watch this offense with McNeil hitting 196, Lindor hitting 189, Dominic Smith hitting 206, Michael Conforto hitting 212, James McCann, who was one of your prized offseason acquisitions, hitting 214. That's the frustrating thing to me, and that's what concerns me, because you're probably not going to get pitching like that going forward, as good as it's been. You'll get good pitching, but maybe not like that. And the Mets were in a position to take advantage of that with even competent offense, right? We're not even talking about, blow the doors off, score 5-6 runs a game. We're not talking about that. We just need enough, we're talking about timely hitting to help these pitchers out. And the fact that they haven't gotten that, I think I'm concerned. I will be honest. I know it's early. I don't try to draw conclusions too early, but but it's concerning to me. And you can qualify me as being very concerned.
Yeah, and just to go off that, I mean, you mentioned taking advantage of the pitching while it's on fire right now. I mean, you got to produce more than 3 hits when DeGrom gives you a 1-run, 7-inning pitching performance. I mean, you can't have 3 hits against the Red Sox in that game. That just is not – that cannot happen. So I think for those reasons, this is the same Mets story of not capitalizing on their pitching performances. And Mets piece together wins in games where they don't have the pitching, when guys like David Peterson go out and give you 5 innings and a couple runs. I mean, they are classic for not hitting in the games where they can easily capitalize on 2 or 3 runs when DeGrom's out there and they can't even do that. So I think that says a lot about where this hitting needs to go in order for them to be competitive.
What's super frustrating too is almost that I feel like we were going into the season thinking that, like, all right, offense is good now. This is going to be fun. Pitching, we'll see if the rotation holds up with the injuries and everything. You know, we know different. And then it's been the total opposite. I mean, the pitching's been the best in the MLB, I believe, by ERA. I would think it's number 1, and the offense has been abysmal enough for us to still be talking about how abysmal it is, because how can they not score? It's just it's not clicking.
Yeah, I mean, they went 20 innings without scoring a run. These were the starters they dealt with in that time. All right, you ready for this? Garrett Richards, Nick Pivetta, Chase Anderson. And they scored 2 runs in those games. I mean, this is not, I mean, no offense to those guys, but this is not, you know, the Clayton Kershaw, Max Scherzer, you know, guys you would see regularly in the NL East, Trevor Rogers, guys who are really good pitchers. Like, this is not that at all. These are not good pitchers they're going against, and yet the offense is still doing this. Yes, I'm concerned. I don't know what the next steps are. Luis Rojas, I think the fan base is turned on at this point, but yeah, that's not indicative of anything really. I don't know if he's a good manager or not, to be honest. But I do know that people are very skeptical on him, to say the least. So I'm probably skeptical on him as well for this team, for this situation.
Yeah, definitely. I think he stepped into a position where I think the guy before him, Callaway, was not the guy for that job, obviously. And it's hard to really get a read on Rojas because, you know, he's a quiet manager. He's not really loud, or he doesn't really seem to stand out to you. And at the end of the day, guys like us sitting on it, we're watching. I mean, we know the game, and we're studying up on the Mets and the Yankees, but it's hard to know what's going on inside that locker room. I mean, is Rojas how he works with the players? And I think it's tough for us to call for his job if the guys are going out there and not performing. I mean, Rojas isn't responsible for Francisco Lindor hitting 189 after just signing a $341 million contract. That's not on him. And at the end of the day, the players got to go out to perform. I always say this in regards to managers. They can put players in positions to perform, but at the end of the day, the players have to perform. And Rojas can't go up there and knock in a guy from second with 2 outs. The players got to do that. And it seems very simple, but I don't think if you're the Mets, you rush to call Rojas and fire him. I think a new manager trying to get these guys together on the same page and get the chemistry going would just work against the Mets at this point. So I'm not there if I'm a Met fan. I think they just need to let this lineup come together on its own.
Yeah, I probably agree with that. And I'm not there either, but I will say they've got a new owner, and you know, usually those things kind of mix like oil and water. So let's just see where that winds up going. I want to pivot to the Yankees quickly because they are still under 500, but Giancarlo Stanton and Aaron Judge are playing really well right now. And they've been both difficult outs. Stanton in particular has an 8-game hitting streak. Hits a ball like 115 miles an hour every night. I am not worried about the Yankees. I think they will be just fine. But I want you guys' opinions on that. Where do you stand on the Yankees now after a month of baseball, and they still find themselves under 500 at this point in the season?
I know Mike is the Yankees fan, but I'll get things started because he and I spoke about both of the New York teams just right as the season was starting, and we talked about how they're both, probably going to be in that 90 win echelon. Things not looking so hot. But the Yankees have gone from dealing with Giancarlo Stanton to having him be their hottest hitter right now with Voit. Very, very excited to return. I mean, and looking like he might be back soon as well. Got to feel like you're in a good spot. I mean, spirits are up if guys are hitting, and just gotta capitalize on moments like these. Keep things rolling.
Yeah, I was hitting the panic button as of a week ago with Kris Pursiainen on Nightly, and I was worrying about this team. And you know what? Recently, since the Cleveland series, even the Baltimore series, the team has looked good. I mean, last 7 days were 6-3, the Yankees. The averages have turned around. You got Stanton hitting 464 in the last 7, Urshela 333 last 7, Glaber 318, LeMahieu 316, Judge 353, 3 homers, all in the last 7 days. The bats are heating up for this, and we needed those top guys to perform if the Yankees were looking to creep up in that division. I think this is huge. Another guy I want to point out, Chad Green. He's been dominant, 0.59 ERA, hasn't given up a run since April 14th against the Blue Jays. Having a guy like that in your bullpen, in addition to Chapman, says a lot about the Yankees' pen and what they can do in support of their starters. And one last thing I want to touch on with the Yankees is the starting pitching coming along. Herman looked great against the Orioles, 7 innings, only 1 walk. Even Kluber has looked good in recent. He's looking like old Kluber again, very slowly. The longevity still needs to get there. Would like to see Kluber go deeper into games. But Herman, Kluber, both good. I liked King in the bullpen. When Herman started the game, King came in relief, 2 innings in relief to close out the game. He looked great. And Garrett Cole, I mean, we know him by now. He was dominant against the Tigers. No walks, 12 strikeouts. I mean, that is just pure dominance, especially across 6 innings. He's averaging 2 strikeouts an inning. So, I mean, things are looking good for the Yankees. I like the starting pitching. Chad Green looking great in the bullpen. And then those top guys in the lineup. So, if you're a Yankee fan, maybe the record doesn't speak for where they're heating up right now, but they're looking really good. And I think in a couple weeks, they're going to slowly start to creep up on the Red Sox in that division. So you got to like how they're looking right now.
Yeah, and they're also capitalizing on schedule, if we're being honest. I mean, Cleveland, a lineup that's not very good. Baltimore is not very good. Tigers, obviously, are in a rebuild. So you have to give them credit for that they have to sit there and say, you know what, okay, these are the games we need to win. Let's go win them. It's been a mixed bag in terms of that, but this weekend, a big step towards the Yankees getting that done and maybe moving up in the AL East after we all hit the panic button. Gotta love hitting the panic button in April.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's my favorite sport.
Yeah, well, be a little impulsive.
Oh man, I can't speak as a Mets fan. Season being over after 2 games. Yeah, I'm not gonna criticize anybody for that. Nonetheless, we're moving along here. 1 a.m. hour. We've got Dave Parker coming up next. Longtime MLB great, talking about his new book and much more. Stay with us.
Be sure to follow WFUV Sports on all of our social media platforms. At WFUV Sports on Twitter, at WFUV_sports on Instagram, and WFUV Sports on Facebook and YouTube. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
It's WFUV and WFUV HD, New York. Listener-supported public media from Fordham, the Jesuit University of New York. Right here on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org. This is One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show on 90.7 FM, WFUV.org, and WFUVSports.org.
Welcome back to One on One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show, taking you up until 2 a.m. here on 90.7 FM, Facebook, and YouTube. Very, very pleased to welcome in our next guest. He is a 19-year Major League Baseball veteran, played for the Pirates, Reds, A's, Brewers, Angels, and Blue Jays in his career, and he is the author of a new book called Cobra, A Life of Baseball and Brotherhood, along with Dave Jordan. The Cobra himself, Dave Parker, joins us on One on One. Dave, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. Thank you for being here. And I guess start with kind of the basic question whenever somebody writes a book is, what exactly inspired you to write this book, come out with this now at this point in your life?
Well, there was so many people that's not written stuff about me over the years that didn't portray me in the right light. So I wanted to write a book, and it took me like 20 years to really get it off the ground. And it took me 2 years to finalize it. So I just wanted to shed some light on who Dave Parker is and what Dave Parker is about.
Great to hear. I've certainly enjoyed the book and the perspective that we got from it. I have to wonder, going back to just when you spoke about your time in high school and your transition to college, what was it like in terms of being yourself, being confident in your capability as an athlete, and just hoping to make it to the major leagues? What was that period like in which you just had to kind of believe in yourself as you awaited?
Well, that came from my parents. My mother and father always emphasized to me that I could be anything I wanted to be if I put my mind to it. So they impressed me with telling me that, and I tried to live up to it. I was always competitive, and I knew that I was going to be great in sports. I remember telling two of my friends that we was walking to school. We were about 2 miles from school, and I told one guy that I was going to be a baseball player, and my friend Tim wanted to be a quarterback. And I said, well, I'm going to end up being the first $1 million paid player. I told him this in the 11th grade. And when I did it in 78, they drove to Pittsburgh, and they just sit up and stared at me for about 10 minutes because I told them this in 11th grade. But I always believed that I had the ability to do and be anything I wanted to be.
Talking with Dave Parker, former MLB great, here on One. Dave, you talked a little bit about your MLB career, and I think a lot of people, when they think of you as a baseball player, they think of those Pirates teams in the late 70s that you were just referencing, specifically 1979. What did being on that team in 79, with you, Willie Stargell, all the great players on that team, what did that mean to you in your career, in your life?
Well, it was good to have those guys as a part of the team because they took me on the wing. They taught me how to be a major leaguer. Stargell especially. Doc Ellis was one of the top pitchers in Major League Baseball at the time. We had Al Oliver, one of the tremendous line drive hitters. We just had a team of stars and guys with personality and charisma. We were probably America's team. Dallas is always throwing that out there, but I think the Pirates was America's team at the time.
Great to hear, and just I can't imagine what that might feel like to be part of such a loved team. In regards to your $1 million per year contract, which you brought up as indeed being baseball's first $1 million per year contract, we know nowadays that players receive large deals, and obviously fans and media have their opinions. However, I read that the response to that deal from a certain sect of fans was quite unfriendly. Would you feel comfortable getting into that reaction from those fans and how that made you feel?
Well, I had Pittsburgh. I was in Pittsburgh during the time I signed the contract, and it was during a period in Pittsburgh where they were down on their inner streets, which was coal and steel, and they were struggling for money at the time for the city, and they just couldn't identify to a guy making $1 million a year for playing baseball. And I ran into some problems with my fans after signing the contract because of the fact that Pittsburgh was struggling with the two major industries, and they couldn't deal with the fact that I was getting that $1 million+ a year.
Dave, you talked in the book extensively right from the outset about your relationship with Pete Rose, one of the great players of all time. And you talked about how much that meant to you. But what did that relationship mean in your life as you went along in your playing career, talking about a guy who had obviously accomplished so much in the game and is the all-time hits leader in Major League Baseball?
Well, it was a thrill to play with Pete, and it was a thrill to play against him, and a larger thrill to play with him, because Pete played the game the way it should be played. And that's at 100%. He earned that title of Charlie Hustle because that's what he did. I mean, walking to the plate was like running because he played the game that way. And you got to respect that. And I respected him and still respect him. And I think he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Great perspective. I wanted to get into next, just, after reading Cobra and hearing, just that history, the time in which you wrote about just social issues were as pertinent, as they always are in society, and the struggles of being a Black athlete at the time were just very apparent. Obviously, it's much different nowadays in regards to, any league, and player empowerment is a great movement that's being advanced year after year in various sports. Did you feel at the time that the struggles socially really affected, your stance as a player on just like how you felt in the league? Did you feel that there really was a sense from team leaders, the brain trusts, presidents, general managers, of just an unfairness, or did you feel that the talent was what really spoke to those managers?
Well, I think it was a little racial bias involved. Every 25th man, the last guy on the roster was always white. You never did give that brother that break to be the 25th man. General managers were all white. No Black general managers. Frank Robinson was the first Black manager in Cleveland. He had to be a player manager. So there was a whole lot of things that indicated that race was an issue in major sports.
Dave, switching gears just slightly here. At the end of the book, in the epilogue, you talked briefly about the game of baseball today, which is obviously different than when you played. And you said that it's no worse, it's no better, it's different. But we see a game today where there's more strikeouts, there are fewer balls in play. What do you think can be improved about the way baseball is played today as you watch this game that you played so well for so many years?
Well, it's a different game. They don't move the runner. They don't hit behind the runner. They don't double steal. They don't do none of the things to produce runs. They swing for the home run, and if they don't get it, they punch out. Guys have got 125, 140 strikeouts. You know, there's got to be some guys on base in scoring position when they come to the plate. And they're not maximizing the game. They're not playing small ball. And they're not fundamentally sound. They throw to the wrong base. It's just a different animal. And I'm a strong believer of get whatever the market can bear. So make the money, but don't cheat the product.
Dave, great perspective again. Thank you. I wanted to ask about your time as a coach. So on not on the player side, but on the coaching staff. Just how did you feel your experience as a player helped you, of course, as a coach, and also kind of in regards to Jimmy's question about, you know, the different eras and how the game has evolved over time. How did you see, you know, were there any difficulties in terms of coaching players, you know, playing in a newer era of the game? Did you see certain things translate or not translate?
I saw guys challenge me. I mean, I now feel working with outfielders and guys challenge me. And Jim Edmonds, I remember telling me one time, how did it feel to have the best young outfield in baseball? I said, I read that when I first came here. I said, but everybody out here don't want a batting title, raise their hand. I was the only one raised my hand. I said, everybody out here don't want MVP, raise your hand. I was the only guy raised my hand. And I said, every guy here now win the World Series, raise your hand. And after doing that about 4 times, Jim Evans said, we get the pitchers, shut up. But they still challenged me. And I was a proven player. And you're never too experienced or never too old or too young to learn. And they got to learn.
Dave, before we let you go, you've been candid over the last few years about your battle with Parkinson's disease and how, you know, that's affected you and what people can do to help. And you've been very active with the Dave Parker 39 Foundation, which helps people fight Parkinson's. I'm curious, could you just tell us a little bit more about that? Can you tell our audience a little bit more about that so they know how they can help out with the Dave Parker Foundation?
Well, right now we're doing a lot of fundraisers and events, and you can send or purchase books to Dave Parker 39 Foundation, Amazon, Walmart, Barnes and Noble. You can purchase from those locations, and any purchase of a book would be deeply appreciated. And enjoy dealing with you guys. If you need me, don't hesitate to call.
He's Dave Parker, author of Cobra, A Life of Baseball, and Brotherhood, MLB Great. Dave, thank you so much for the time today. We really appreciate it. It was a real honor.
No problem. Good interview.
sure to follow WFUV Sports on all of our social media platforms. At WFUV Sports on Twitter, at WFUV_sports on Instagram, and WFUV Sports on Facebook and YouTube. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Last hour of one-on-one. Again, our thanks to Dave Parker for joining us on the show. Let's get into some basketball now. So, Chris, you strike me as an optimist. I don't know if I'm right on that or not, but that's the impression
I think you are.
I get.
I think you are.
Good. Well, that's the impression that I have gotten. But if I would have told you at this point in November that the New York Knicks would be fourth in the East, 35-28 with 9 games to play.
Drug test.
Yeah. You would have told me I was crazy now, wouldn't you have?
Oh, yeah. Nah.
Yeah.
I might have just started crying because it meant that we traded the entire team for Bradley Beal or something like that. So either way, there would have been tears. There would, joy, sadness, surprise. There would have been tears involved, probably.
That being said, that is where the New York Knicks are. They haven't made any big trades except for Derrick Rose, if you count that as a big trade. It's turned into a big trade. But Julius Randle is a superstar, we think. And here they are, in position to have home court advantage for the first round. Incredible year, incredible stuff by the New York Knicks. And I am just so impressed by this team, Chris, that I am inclined to sit here on May 2nd, I should say, and say that Tom Thibodeau should be the coach of the year. I've gone back and forth on this. We asked Jeremy Cohen about it last week. And he said, well, there's Monty Williams with the Phoenix Suns, who are now the 1 seed in the West, and we'll get into that later. But to me, there's no team that's overachieving in basketball right now more than the New York Knicks. And I think that's a credit to Tibbs. That's credit to the culture he has built and the job he has done this year. So to me, he is the coach of the year. But your thoughts on that?
I absolutely understand the argument for Monty Williams. Especially because I used to be the one screaming it from the rooftop since the start of the season that Phoenix is going to surprise people. Monty Williams is going to surprise people. Devin Booker, that reputation he got, of not being able to win, bye-bye. Chris Paul's coming to town. I will say that I saw the Suns being a top 4 team, and I was like, that they have the talent to do it. So the fact that Williams has them as the first team, as opposed to just the top 4 or 5 team in the West, still an incredible feat, is impressive. Definitively. Like, that is something to have the Phoenix Suns as the number 1 seed. However, and you knew this was coming, I'm not there anymore. Some people thought being just 500 was enough to catapult Tibbs. In the conversation, I said, no, it's Monty Williams, and don't trick yourself. Don't fool yourself. It's It's Monty Williams, and that's okay because Tibbs is still good. I think Monty Williams eventually winning the award is how the league will reward that organization for that turnaround. However, the Knicks should be leaving this year's award ceremony with the coach of the year and the most improved player. And that is a result of the low expectations, the great production, the results, and the fact that nothing major happened to change it. It was that team, that 21.5 win team is going to be a top Eastern squad, like come end of the year. And that I started myself trying to say it because I almost couldn't put the words together. The Knicks are going to be a top Eastern squad with Elfrid Payton as the start. It's just like, wow. So to be in that spot, if you're New York, obviously you're going to be happy no matter what walking out of this year. But I'm of the opinion that the Knicks should be going home with 2 awards.
Elfrid Payton's like maybe the one not bright spot on this team. Like every time he's out there, I just get mad. I don't even root for the Knicks, but I'm just like, play the young guys. But I get it. I get it.
It's not even young versus old. It's like, play the guys that pass.
Yeah.
And can shoot. Forget shoot. Can shoot. Alfred shoots. He lets the threes fly sometimes. He likes to let him. He like him and his little trebuchet release. He likes to let him go.
Yeah, I shoot too, but
Yeah.
they don't go in.
Did I ever tell you I can play the clarinet?
How?
I can play it.
Well, you can, but but what's it going to sound like? Yeah.
Oh, I can play it though. So that's where we are with Elfrid Payton.
Yeah. Anywho, moving on from Elfrid Payton, though, you have to remember where the Knicks started out from. Okay, as you said, same team as last year, but this is the team with the second lowest payroll in the league, ahead of OKC. And you look at a team like Phoenix. At the end of the year last year, they were undefeated in the bubble. You knew they were a move or two away from being really good. And they made that move with Chris Paul. And Chris Paul is a stud, and people are making MVP cases for him, which again we can get into. But everybody knew Phoenix was close. The way in which they have done it is probably even more impressive. But people knew that they were going to be a pretty good team entering the year, and most people had them in the playoffs somewhere. The New York Knicks. I mean, people were saying, you know what, if they finish 12th in the East or 11th in the East, that's a good season. I mean, this is a team that, last year with David Fizdale, he gets fired. You're saying, oh, there's another victim of the MSG machine. And that was
gutted and rudderless.
Yep. There it is.
I won't forget it.
Yeah.
Adrian.
But that made sense as a take, right? Because how many people had gone through the gutted and rudderless roster at Madison Square Garden? Derek Fisher, Jeff Hornacek, David Fizdale, Kurt Rambis on an interim basis. Name whoever you want. They came in and they left, right? Tom Thibodeau comes in and you're like, okay, maybe you can sneak into the playoffs. Sneak into the playoffs. This team is the 4th seed in the East. Outside of Brooklyn, Philadelphia, and Milwaukee, who everybody thought was the 3 best teams, probably coming into the season, it's the Knicks. And from where they came from to where they are now, this is the story to me of the NBA this season. Like the feel-good team playing hard for Tibbs. I was skeptical of Tibbs when they hired him, but that guy can coach, and he's gotten the most out of this team. And you know what? Hey, good for them. Good for Knicks fans, by the way, who are handling this incredibly. I see the videos outside the Garden every night when they win, and it's like they just won a playoff game. It's incredible. So
I just missed being in the most recent video that went viral.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, I was right behind the guy in the Lawrence Taylor jersey. You saw him in the video. you didn't see me. To be at MSG, last Wednesday and Monday, I was at the games, and I've gone to a couple others this season. It's not normal. Like you walk in there, MSG always feels like an appointment. And usually with a loss, but an appointment. Like you show up and you go and they bring you to this area and then you go here and then you're entertained here. And then it's like, it's just this very set up entertainment, like, and I love it because it's the home of my team and it's the Mecca and but it was always just, I'd show up and it was like, all right, time to go pay $14 for another hamburger that I can eat while watching Damian Dotson try to win us this game. Like, and what I'm realizing now, like live on this show, is that the extent to which I was okay with that was concerning. Yeah. Probably due to not having much more just to compare that to. But like this year, I'll do it. I'm younger, so I can be marked away as the naive one. I'll say it. This feels better for Knicks fans than 2013 did because it's sustainable and it doesn't feel like it's just about to fall off a cliff where we haven't even started climbing yet. And the low payroll, the amount of young players playing significant roles on the team, those guys are going to age. They're going to develop. They're going to play for different teams as we get them the heck out of here for established veterans. I mean, I think Leon Rose and company might actually lose some of the trust of the fan base when they start cashing in chips, because I think the extent to which these guys are going to find themselves being aggressive is going to surprise fans. And at first, I don't think it's going to be for the best. New York Knicks fans, we clutch onto our assets like pearls. Our first round picks are priceless to us because we dealt with so many years of losing them for no reason. It was like, oh, we have a first round pick this year? No. Oh, they got it 8 years ago. Never mind. It's just like, and you don't even remember. Why? Because the person that the first round pick was traded for to come have a big impact on your franchise is collecting checks either in retirement or in another city, and you're left with nothing. So after so many years of this, and now recently in 2013, having had a team with all these veterans on 1-year deals, these older guys expiring, we're somewhere that I can look around and be like, we are not even close to done, and I love that.
I think we also need to have some perspective here, right? RJ Barrett is 20 years old. It's impressive what he's doing at this age, right? Emmanuel Quickley is 21 years old. Obi Toppin is older than both of those guys, which, he's been a little up and down this season. But you feel good about where things stand because it's such a young roster. And there's been talk about them, potentially making big moves this summer. There was a piece that came out yesterday at Yahoo about Damian Lillard, which I thought was very interesting, which we'll get into in the next segment. But like it feels like the start of something. And I think you touched on that, and I think it's an appropriate point. 2013 was a weird one-off because you had guys playing all over the place in weird spots that wound up working. But this feels like people are in the right place at the right time. And this, if everyone stays healthy, which is a big if, which was the problem for Tibbs in Chicago. But if everybody stays healthy, is a huge deal. And the other thing the Knicks did, which I thought was great, they have brought in so many good value veterans who understand what it is to win, right? Taj Gibson, Nerlens Noel. They trade for Derrick Rose. Like, these are guys who do a lot of the little things right that contribute to winning that the Knicks just have not been doing since 2013. So I think Leon Rose deserves a ton of credit for that as well.
You want another fun free agency angle for the Knicks, Jimmy?
Yes.
Talking about the vets they brought in, let's look for some similarities here. Alec Burks, lottery pick. Nerlens Noel, top 6 pick.
Yep.
Austin Rivers, first round pick. These are guys who came into the league with expectations. Alec Burks, can he be that superstar junior shooting guard that can just go score a ton? And can Nerlens Noel get the offensive game down and become like the center the league has to fear? Can Austin Rivers, live up to the name, those high school highlights, the and one, the classic legendary and one tape from Austin Rivers High School? And they came to the NBA and they learned what it's like to be a nobody. They learned what it's like to be, they're the journeymen. They're out and about. And every once in a while passed on 70 million and was lucky to get 5 this summer. They got together a group of guys who as a whole just shouldn't be where they are right now in the standings. Like they should not be 4th in the East. But, and this is why I have Tom Thibodeau as my current coach of the year, the buy-in that he garnered up and down the roster, not just into into the roles. Like, you are this for this team, and that is going to help us most, and it's going to work, and that's what you're going to do. And it's like, I've been in the league for 7 years, and I'm just going to be like, all right. Like, that's what guys did. They were just like, all right. And they listened, and they bought in. Julius showed up in the best shape of his life. Shout out to Tyler Relf for making him quit wine and getting him on that workout regimen that he asked himself to be on to become an all-star. The dedication, the buy-in, everything, it makes sense when you really dive into it, how this team is capable of overachieving to such a degree.
Yeah, so good on the Knicks for that. I just want to dive quickly into the Nets. They've got 2 of the big 3 back with Durant and Kyrie Irving. The question is, when Harden comes back, how will this go together? Kris, I'll just put you on the spot here. Do you still look at the Nets as the favorites in the East?
Yes.
The only question is the big 3 going to be together? Are we going to see those guys ever at full strength? Is the question everybody's asking. I think they're the favorite in the East. You agree? Why?
I'm concerned most about time spent on the court together than I am about actually having them on the court. All of this sitting out now is going to be to have them healthy for the playoffs. However, as the Los Angeles Clippers showed us last year, and as I alluded to earlier with my reference to NBA 2K and Madden and all those video games, talent, roster, ball doesn't always equal a championship. So tough spot for the Nets to be in because they just need to learn how to play with each other. I don't think they know how, as of right now. They can make it look like they do because they're professional NBA players, but those guys don't have a fine-tuned synergy. Can they get it done by the playoffs? I think they're good enough to figure it out, but they've got to do.
They do. You could always take the Bucks. That's for sure. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, yeah,
I'm only kidding.
I'll be Sixers. I'll be Sixers squad for as long as the Nets are not the favorites, but they are.
Nets Sixers will be a good matchup in the East Finals if that happens. I hope it does. That'll be a lot of fun. I would look forward to that. We're continuing with the basketball talk to close out the show. You ever play that game in school, Would You Rather? Well, we're going to play a little Would You Rather coming up next. You'll see what I mean on the other side of this break. Stay with us, one-on-one. Last 25 minutes here on 90.7 FM, Facebook, and YouTube. We'll be right back.
Be sure to follow WFUV Sports on all of our social media platforms. At WFUV Sports on Twitter, at WFUV_sports on Instagram, and WFUV Sports on Facebook and YouTube. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics. To support the WFUV Sports Department, visit support.wfuv.org to become a member or make a one-time donation. WFUV Sports, home to New York's longest-running sports call-in show and the flagship station of Fordham Athletics.
Welcome back to 101 Nightly, New York's longest running sports call-in show. Now, before we sign off, guys, we're going to play a little game, Would You Rather, and it's going to be NBA playoff edition. And we're going to start in the East with the Nets. Now, at the current standing, it's Nets first place, 76ers second place. Sixers only a half game back, so anything can happen. But for this one, we're going to play, if you are the Nets or the Sixers, whoever ends up taking that 2 seed, who would you rather face? Now, the two teams that could be are the Knicks and the Hawks, okay? Both teams have the 4 seed right now. They're tied up for it, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we get closer. So if you are in that 1 seed, who would you rather face as the 4? The Nets or the Knicks, or the Hawks? I'll start with you, Jimmy.
I think I'd rather play the Hawks. And, you know, I was thinking about this. The Hawks might have more offensive talent. They might have more playmakers offensively, and they might have more of an ability to get their shots and get buckets, particularly with Trae Young. But if I go play the Knicks, I want that wrapped up in 4 or 5 games because they play hard defense, they're physical, they're tough, and I don't want to go deep into a series with that. I'm not saying the Nets necessarily would, but if that goes to 6 games, that's not your typical 6 games. That is a knockdown, drag-out, emotionally draining series in the Eastern Conference semifinals. And then you'd have to go play Philadelphia or Milwaukee in the conference finals, both of whom have a ton of talent. So I would take the Hawks in that because the Nets can outscore the Hawks, right? We talk about the Nets defense all season long, but they can score better than anybody probably in the league when they're firing on all cylinders. So I'd much rather play Atlanta because they play the way I want to play, which is just run up and down the court. And then if we have to win games 130, 120, we'll do that. So be it. But I don't want to play the New York Knicks. I don't want that.
Mike, I gotta take you back in time for my answer. And because I am, of course, a Knick fan, it's going to be related to Knick-related pain. So let's do it. Yeah, we've got 11-year-old Kris tuning in every other day to watch his New York Knickerbockers. Carmelo Anthony, I had 2 jerseys. I was very fond of both. One of them being the cursed orange jersey. So, they're going up against the Boston Celtics in round 1 of the NBA playoffs. Now, the Knicks are the better team. Carmelo Anthony's the best player on the court. The Celtics guys are old, yada, yada. And that series sucked. Every minute of it sucked to watch. It wasn't fun. Did the Knicks come out of that series? Did they advance to the second round? Yes, they did. I maintain to this day that the reason we played as poorly as we did against the Pacers, yes, Roy Hibbert existed, and Paul George and Darren Collison, Lance Stevenson, Danny Granger. What a team, man!
David West too was on that team, I think.
Yeah, David West pre-Warriors. I mean, just what a fun squad, and we lost to them. And I maintain to this day that the reason we lost to that Pacers team, the reason Carmelo Anthony did not walk out of that series with a win, is because our team had a lot of older guys, as we just talked about in the last segment. You know, it wasn't built super sustainably, but it was a good team. And they were exhausted out of their minds. The Boston Celtics, despite their age, gave us a run for our money. They gave us a really tough series. They made things really hard on us, even when they were not our opponent anymore, just because of the fatigue. There is not a team in the Eastern Conference right now. There is not one team, in my opinion, that is going to tell you that they'd rather play Atlanta. The New York Knicks play slow. They get the right shots and are recently hitting them. And they have a top defense in the league, not because of incredible Gobert-like personnel. It's the scheme, and it's their execution, and it's their 48-minute devotion to that scheme. That is a team that you do not want to match up against in the first round of the playoffs. You are showing up as a top team looking to play a lower seed, and you have to exert yourself as if it's a bunch of it's a tough stretch of the regular season where you've got like Lakers, Clippers, Warriors, Suns back to back to back to back. Like, you're going to be that tired. You know, the games may be easier to win, but they're not going to be easy. This team has the ability to keep it close with any squad in the league, even if they end up losing. You don't want to see the Knicks.
Yeah, I think, Jimmy, you made a great point earlier. And then, Chris, your point about tiring out the team. I think the Knicks aren't going to challenge the Nets to win a series. Like, maybe they can send it late into the series, maybe a game 5 or 6, potentially a game 7. Who knows with the NBA playoffs. But the Hawks are a team the Nets can take advantage of because, like you said, Jimmy, they play to their style. And if the Nets want anything, they want that. An easy 5-game series, maybe even 4, where you run them out of the gym, really. I don't think Trae Young, I don't think those guys, Collins, can keep up with the Nets. I really don't. But I think the Knicks can formulate a game plan behind Tibbs that would just give the Nets trouble. I mean, I can't think of a better defensive team in the NBA. It's hard to. They're out there, but Knicks are a top 5 defensive team in the NBA. And I think if you're the Nets, you don't want to see that. And between the Hawks and the Knicks, the best player on either team is on the Knicks. I think Julius Randle has shown himself to be the best player out of both these teams. I mean, 24 points per game, 10 rebounds, 6 assists. I mean, he's potentially put himself at the very edge of this MVP discussion. So for those reasons, I think neither team, I think either Nets or if it's the Sixers that I'm claiming that 1 seed would want to see the Knicks in that first round matchup.
No, I mean, I wouldn't. That's the exact type of team that just wrecks your entire playoff run, right? Like we were talking about March Madness. And what are the types of teams that you don't want to see in round 1, round 2? It's the teams that'll drag you out, that'll press you defensively, that'll make you work for 40 minutes. The Knicks will do that for 48 minutes. And that's why it would be problematic to play them. Round 1, round 2, whatever it may be. It's not even that, I think they would beat the Nets, as you said, Mike, but it's just the way they would go about it would really, really put a dent in things.
And Jimmy, I think another team that could be interesting to see that could put pressure on a top team in the East is a team like Miami and also Boston. Both those teams could also put pressure, a team like New York. And that's going to lead us into our second would you rather. I mean, as of right now, the Bucks are the 3 seed in the Eastern Conference. I think that is pretty shored up. I don't see them leapfrogging over the Nets or the Sixers, but I don't think the Knicks are going to have enough in the tank to be able to get that 3 seed. And the Bucks right now could either draw the Celtics, who are 34-30, or the Heat, who are 33-30. They are the 6 and 7 seeds right now. Both those are possibility for a first-round matchup with the Bucks. So, Chris, I'll start with you this time. If you're the Bucks, would you rather face the Celtics, or do you rather face the Heat?
Tough one. My gut reaction, and this is what I'm going to end up rolling with as my final answer, because it's got to be Boston in my opinion. Just because of how things have been there this season, it's a lot of underperforming, guys not meeting expectations, the team not meeting expectations, the coach not meeting, expectations of fans. Tatum and Brown have been absolutely phenomenal from the wing spots. Tatum himself coming off a 60-point night. The problem with me is everything else about that team. So they have the two wings that you fear. Like, you fear those guys in the playoffs, because having to deal with them when the floor shrinks and the clutch gene becomes more important than ever is just not pretty. The rest of that team is a wreck. They were starting Tristan Thompson at power forward for like an extended period of time. Like, you can't be serious about China. Started Tristan Thompson at power forward.
Hey, it worked for the Cavs, didn't it?
Well, the Cavs had a one LeBron James on the roster, of which the Celtics, unfortunately for them, do not have any to spare. So no LeBrons in Boston means trouble for them, because just about, with the issues with Kemba, that just might be who they need to win the ring this year.
I was looking at this, and it's interesting you referenced Jason Tatum's 60-point game. Buried in that is that they were down 29 at the half to the Spurs at home. So that's poor. That being said, I'm actually going to take Miami on this one. They have been banged up this entire season. The trade for Victor Oladipo, he's played 4 games for them. They, make all these other moves. I mean, we haven't seen Butler, Adebayo, all these guys. It's like you get one back, and then the other gets hurt. So it's been kind of tricky for them. If they're healthy, they're a tough out. But again, you trade for Victor Oladipo, and you expect more than just 4 games from him. And Eric Spoelstra has been, cryptic about when he's going to come back, if he's going to come back. He's making good progress. I don't know what that means. But, look, the Heat are well coached. The Heat are a tough team. I would be inclined to say Boston here for the same reasons why I said the Hawks for the last question. But because of the injuries the Heat are dealing with, and as you said, Chris, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, I don't want to see that in the first round of the playoffs. So I will take Miami on this one.
Yeah. I'm going to go with I'd rather face the Celtics if I'm Milwaukee. I'll fade you, Jimmy. And I think a lot of that's matchup. I think Celtics might be the better team right now, but I don't think Milwaukee wants to see Miami. After what happened in the bubble, I'm not sure the Bam matchup is going to be friendly for Giannis. And I think that puts way too much pressure on Middleton and Holiday to step up. And I'm not sure the Bucks want that scenario. I think Boston is a much more favorable matchup for Milwaukee, and it can let Giannis really take over the game. And I think if Bam's healthy and he's playing, he really can present. He might be the only guy in the NBA besides Anthony Davis or that can present problems for Giannis. And I think for those reasons, I think the Bucks don't want to see Miami. And I think that it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, the Heat have the 6th best defensive rating in the NBA. I mean, this is a great defensive team. And the offensive rating, partly because of the injuries, is 24th ranked. So if they get healthy, the defense is going to be there 100%. And I trust Jimmy Butler enough to be able to lead that team past maybe Milwaukee. I'm not saying they're going to beat them in a series, but that's going to be a tougher series, in my opinion, mentally draining series if it's Miami versus Milwaukee than if the Bucks get the Celtics. So for that reason, I'm going to take Miami. I mean, I'd rather face the Celtics, and I don't want to see the Miami Heat.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I mean, I worry about the Heat's injuries and Tyler Hero's kind of taking a step back, and like it's been a weird year for them. And keep in mind also, I mean, Miami played as deep into the bubble as anybody, and they knocked out the Celtics in the conference finals last year. But just keep that in mind when you're talking about the bubble fatigue going into this season. This is where it presents itself. So I think that'll be an interesting thing to watch as well.
Now, before we wrap up, I mean, I want to go one more question out there. I know me and Kris were jawing at each other in the pre-production meeting. We've been having this discussion in the past few weeks out of all of the WFUV guys off the air, but I wanted to bring it up, and I wanted to see, Kris, Jimmy, what your thoughts were. If you could pick one player to have right now, both of these guys are in talks for potential MVP. Both probably won't win it, but they're in the conversation. Damian Lillard, Joel Embiid, who would you rather have? Kris, I'll start with you.
Joel Embiid. I gave it a second so I could think and not regret anything. It's Joel. Can I ask? No. The question was right now. The question is, who would you rather have right now?
I would say now going forward as well. So you get him right now.
Definitely Joel if it's going forward as well. And I think if it's right now, which would present Dame with the advantage, just given age, experience, and all that. Like I think I'm still taking Embiid, and here's why. I'll make it as simple. You know, I won't promise quick, but I'll make it as simple as I can try to organize it in my head, which is come playoff time. Damian Lillard, like, always finds ways to extravagantly save his team from tough spots, and it's really impressive. And he's a one-man wrecking ball, and he's the leader of a team with the fourth worst defense in NBA history. He's not won playoff series, and he's not, he's won playoff series. He's not won significant ones, the third round or further. Not won one of those. He's never been to the fourth round. I mean, I feel like Dame always plays well enough to have himself in that top point guard conversation. You pull out the magnifying glass, and I think the gap between him and Curry is a lot bigger than people imagine. Just because they're the number one and number two best point guards in the A does not mean that they're close. With Embiid, for me, I think it starts with the offensive dominance. Shaquille O'Neal just told people that he has Embiid as a top 5 player in the league, and I can only assume that the reason is the offensive dominance down low has to remind him just a smidge of what it felt like to be the king of the paint. Although that title might soon belong to Zion, I think it's got to be Embiid right now, just getting the ball down low, able to put the ball in the basket with ease, over guys, through guys, fadeaways in the post. He's got it all. And then he can also create offense off the dribble. He does step backs. That's not normal for a 7-foot. I as a Knicks fan, I know quite well that 7-foot players are not supposed to be able to shoot well, and that when you have one, you're supposed to covet it. Embiid is incredible at just shot making from anywhere on the court, from the center position specifically. That's incredibly valuable. Couple that with the all defense level, defense, and you have the makings of a perennial MVP candidate. I think Damian Lillard needs the right team, the right situation, and the right co-star, which CJ McCollum does not seem to be in a spot where he can have his team in a situation to make a deep playoff run. And for Joel, for me right now, it's like, if this guy can stay healthy, good luck to the East, because I'm getting Hakeem vibes of a center just running a conference. I don't think the big man's going to be dead too soon, guys.
Yeah, I think there's interesting points there. I'm going to go Damian Lillard, though. And there's one sentence I picked out of everything you said, Kris. If he stays healthy. Let me bring you back all the way to Embiid's entire career through his health issues. He missing 18 games this season. Last season, 22 games. How about in 2018-2019 season? He missed 18 games there. The year before, 2017-2018 season, missed 19 games. How about 2016-2017? Only played 31 games that year. And then his first 2 years in the league, didn't even play. He was out with a foot injury. So when you look at it like that, his inability to stay healthy has got to worry you. And I think for those reasons, Damian Lillard is the guy you would rather have. I don't think those injuries suddenly vanish when he gets older. If anything, it becomes more of a problem. And you know what they say, the best ability is availability. So for those reasons, it's hard not to pick Damian Lillard. And you talk about playoff success for Lillard. Yes, he's had some moments where he has not lived up to what he should have been. Swept by the Pelicans in the playoffs before first round. That was a bad Western Conference Finals, swept by the Warriors when they didn't have KD. But to get there against the Warriors, he knocked off Russ and PG, beat them 4-1. He beat the Denver Nuggets, a good Denver Nuggets team, beat them in Game 7. And then you talk about early in his career, he beat the Clippers 4-2 as a 5 seed in the first round. He beat Harden's Rockets in 2014 4-2 off a game-winning shot. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to love Lillard. And you were comparing him to Curry. We're not comparing Lillard and Curry. I mean, we're comparing and beating Lillard. And I think if you match the health, Lillard has always been available. He's missed games here and there, but he's never played a season under 72 games, except for the COVID year when they didn't have 82 games. But he's never missed more than 8 games. He's always going to be there for you. And it's hard for me not to take Lillard, knowing what he's about in the clutch, his ability to take over games, shoot for 3. I mean, his stretch in the bubble where it was almost 50-point game after 50-point game was unlike anything I've ever seen. I don't think Embiid could do that. 50-point games, Embiid couldn't pour them in like Lillard was pouring them in. And Lillard's not a bad defensive point guard. I don't know if that
equates to does that equate directly to being good though? Just to start the year, would you have said that Zach LaVine was a better player than Julius Randle this season because he was having the 30-40-point games and Randle wasn't?
No,
what Embiid brings, playmaking, defense. Obviously, Lillard is a great passer himself. He, is a starting point guard in the NBA and quite adept at it. But I think what makes him special is the above-the-break three-point shooting. It's what separates him, is his ability to just break a defense by pulling up from there. Embiid can do it all, and he can play well on the other end of the floor.
When he's on the floor, which is not often.
I'll say that, I usually bring this up earlier in Embiid debates, but this is my go-to point. I know it's lame, but it's the first season that we're watching right now that he seems to be taking the role of a number one player really seriously. So, we don't really know what can happen from here. I think it's only up.
If I may jump in here real quick, did you guys read that Yahoo article on Lillard yesterday?
Chris Haynes?
Yes, the
Britain?
Chris Haynes article. That
Indeed.
Struck me as like almost apologia for him trying to get out of Portland. And I don't know if it struck you guys the same way. I think Mark Berman had an article basically to this point where it seemed like they wrote it and it was, Damian Lillard has no help with the Blazers, which to an extent is true. Like, they don't defend. There's a lot of things they need to do well, and they don't. They've had a lot of bad losses.
Well, Dame is one of the ones who doesn't defend, so I don't know how,
Right. But the hypothetical I saw was Lillard to the Knicks. That is very interesting to me. I would do that if I was the Knicks, and I could. But
so, obviously, if you can keep Barrett and Randall,
yes,
to add Lillard to those two would be the proposition, and that would have to intrigue you. If you are Leon Rose and company, you have to believe in yourself to think that you can get a contender around those 3 guys. I think it's that simple.
Yeah. So
Chris Haynes on the Portland beat for years. Just one last note. I think it's kind of interesting just to think about where that story might have come from. The guy who was friendly to Damian Lillard for years as a beat reporter is now reporting that Damian Lillard could use some help.
Interesting. I have to see how that plays out. Guys, this has been really fun. Had an awesome time with Chris and Mike tonight. One-on-one. Coming to a close here, the sports director of WFUV is Bobby Chaffardini. A special thank you to our guest, MLB great Dave Parker. You can check out his book, Cobra, out now. Until then, for my partner, Kris Pursiainen, Mike Calamari with the headlines, our producer, Alex Walls, I'm Jimmy Sullivan. saying so long and thank you for listening to One on One.